Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. It is 8:47 a.m. Tuesday, May 12th. And we got a lot to talk about. We just had CPI. And one of the things I said yesterday was, given the nature of how ferocious this bull market has been, I kind of don't think the market's going to care about CPI. We all know it's going to be a hot print. We all know it's going to be ugly. We all know it's not going to be the best CPI that's out there, at least over the past couple of years, which it was pretty bad, which we'll talk about in a second. And the market doesn't care. Look at these green candles. We were at 7:35 a minute after CPI came out. We were at 7:37. Now, we're still down from 7:39 last night, but the point is, it's starting to recover. Does it actually recover going into 9:30? We'll see what happens. But it's kind of funny. We do have a red pre-market. We've had a massive past couple of green weeks. So it makes sense we're taking a little bit of some steam off some of these stocks. However, I don't know if CPI is the catalyst for it or if in general it is just the idea that these stocks have run so much that Rocket Lab would probably go down a couple percentage points after going up 50% in a couple of days. So I don't know if we can necessarily attribute that to CPI. Now, oil is spiking again in the pre-market, so we'll talk about oil and its relationship to CPI. But at 9:30, it's going to be very interesting to see when the market opens. Do we actually care about a hot consumer price index reading? Bitcoin still above 80. You would think, inflation's heavy, no rate cuts, maybe a rate hike, liquidity is going to dry up, Bitcoin goes down. Nope. Bitcoin doesn't care. So it is quite incredible. It is quite incredible based on this CPI report. Really a muted reaction from the street that we're going to talk about in a second. But overall, if this actually does become an impact, it's not happening in the pre-market. We might have to wait until the market opens, and then we'll see how much the market ultimately cares for it. Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We got a bunch of earnings to talk about from yesterday. We had a ton of earnings this morning as well. Some pretty big beats and raises across the board, which will be exciting to get into. Yup, VG, C Limited, bunch of different companies. We had ASTS and HIMS yesterday. Not necessarily the best price action after the results. We'll see if anyone comes in to buy the dip. And we'll talk more about that. And then we got a bunch of macro stuff heating up. Oil, once again, is above 100. You've got a lot of back and forth between Trump and Iran in terms of not finding any level of compromise on these deals. I don't know if it's just both sides grandstanding to try to get what they want or legit they can't negotiate to find a deal. But it obviously is affecting the markets right now. And you're seeing oil spike up 3.34% while we had the worst CPI that we had in a couple of years. So let's get into it. Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Michael, what's up? Erwin, Twister, Brian, Peter, June, thank you all for being here. Jason, we better not hike. Yeah, I think Trump is probably whispering that to Kevin Warsh's ear as well. You better not hike. But then again, who knows if oil continues to go up as strong as it is. Nolan, what's up? VG Guidance, we'll talk about that. Pinball, Trey Crawford, what's up? Derek Stevenson, Krishna, Cycle Time, Paul Goggin, my dad likes to fish. Best username that's out there. My dad likes to fish. My dad has never gone fishing, dude. I don't think my dad even knows what fishing even he's never done this type of outdoors activities. I think I went fishing once with a friend and I kind of hated it. There was no Wi-Fi, so I wasn't happy. But all right, let's get into it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Carolyn, Jerry, Tom, Julie, what's up? All right, so let's start off with CPI. It was a very ugly print. There's nothing else to say about it. It was ugly. Energy was 40% of the print. 3.8 versus 3.6 is what we saw for the headline CPI, the hottest print since May of 2023. Again, no one cares, at least now. Maybe at 9:30 we get a massive dump and the market cares. But I kind of thought, and I think a lot of people thought yesterday, that if we get a high CPI, it's not going to matter. And it really doesn't. This bull market is not contingent on energy, which we know is inevitably going to come down, hopefully. At least that's what the market is pricing in. Going up or down, because data center spend is not necessarily going up or down, and the market has fundamentally realized, and there's a lot of charts and macro data we'll look at that insinuates that data center spend and CapEx build out is really the only thing that matters. Core CPI 2.8 versus 2.6%, the hottest print since September 2025. The index for all items, less food and energy, rose 0.4% in April. Indices that increase over the month include household furnishings, airline fares, obviously, oil prices going up, personal care, apparel, and education. The indices that decreased were medical care, communication, and new vehicles. So once again, like a bad print, but not a print that I think the market meaningfully is allocating a lot of attention to. We have some other news this morning in regards to Trump and Iran that I think are actually more important in terms of the context, in terms of the fight to get inflation down. But right now, you're just not seeing the market get that crazy about it. So why did oil get up to 102 a barrel? Well, basically, the Iranians came out and said, we reject all ridiculous, essentially they use multiple synonyms for ridiculous claims by the United States trying to get us to stop the core things that we want to do in regards to our own sovereignty. And as a result of that, the Iranians are basically just saying there's no deal, or at least this current deal in terms of the way that it is not going to be structured in any meaningful way. And I think a lot of people thought Iran would obviously reject the initial premise of the deal. Trump fought back and basically said, if they don't take this deal, then we are going to go back to bombing them. He tweeted a picture, as you can see, the S&P getting a nice green candle right there, continuing to go higher, still red, but that red looks like it could flip green. Trump tweeted this picture of essentially saying bye-bye fast boats. And it's a picture of U.S. fighter jets shooting down Iranian ships. So, I mean, once again, they're back and forth. They're not necessarily agreeing to compromise on a lot of stuff, but it is what it is. Ultimately, is this bad for oil? Yeah, this is not good for oil, and getting oil back above 100 is crazy, given it happened 3 times. We got it down below 100 3 times over 3 weeks, and now it's the 4th time back above 100. But, I mean, what are you going to do? At the end of the day, that's the nature of how this attack goes back and forth, and until it affects the market, I don't think people care. I also think, people have been trying to make the argument that, this is a little bit of a melt-up situation that we're having right here if nothing can affect the markets. For those that have been part of melt-ups like COVID or the dot-com bubble or the lead up to 2008, all the bad news that kept coming out didn't matter. And given the bad news that didn't matter, ultimately allowed the market to keep going up and up and up, eventually it mattered. And then we saw somewhat of a collapse. In this scenario, we're going to have to see how that ends up playing out. But if it's not affecting the earnings growth, even if it's affecting inflation, if inflation is not necessarily affecting the economy, even though it's affecting consumer confidence and consumer buying power, you got the Trump administration trying to do a variety of things to subsidize that, like getting rid of the gasoline fuel tax, which is only 18 cents off a gallon of gas. So it's not really going to affect consumers that much. But they're trying to find ways to subsidize this. As of now, oil seems to be having the biggest impact on the consumer, not necessarily on Meta's CapEx spend. Meta, which is losing $5.95 in the pre-market. Kind of hilarious, but nonetheless, there you go, $594.81 on Meta. Oh, you're right. That's not a fighter jet. That's a drone. Yeah, that is a drone. And the fact that Trump is tweeting out drones and you can't get these drone stocks to catch any bit of a bid. I mean, every sector, and this is going to be part of the theme of what we talk about today, every sector has died out in terms of liquidity for the AI names. And we'll show some charts to kind of prove how that's happening. But that's what it seems like is taking place. Micron hit 818 yesterday, fell below 800 like 4 times, rebounded above 18. Now it's at 773. I'm going to be very curious to see if this Micron dip, which is a dip from 818 to 770, so it's like a $50 dip, does that get bought up? Does that get bought up in any meaningful way, or is that going to continue to have a little bit of a decline? Because every day the dip has gotten bought up. Micron has added 3% a day on a $900 billion market cap for the past 10 days. I mean, it is absolutely unbelievable what we're seeing right here, but also going into the Micron thesis, it might make sense given the re-rating on memory. Coatue Investment Management, they are a relatively large firm for managing private and public capital. They came out with a video yesterday and they said memory is the new bottleneck. So you've got the investment firms coming out basically making, this video got 1.3 million views, basically making the case that we think demand for memory is going to be 5x what it is right now. And if that's the case, it doesn't mean Micron has to be 5x bigger than what it is right now, but obviously it means that there might be some more alpha left in that stock, even if the easy money has been made. And their kind of core argument is based on agents and agentic inference taking the role for memory. So that is what we've got in the context of CPI. If you're just joining, it was a hot print, 3.8 versus 3.6. The market does not care. It's kind of crazy because when I was doing the show back in 2023, if we had a print that was even a little bit above what was expected, which for the first 9 months until we got to the end of 2024, we basically did every single time, the market went down every time. And this bull market is transformed into a fundamentally different narrative, which is why it's kind of exciting to see the market not care, but it's also, potentially a little concerning of like, okay, if the market doesn't care about this, what is the market necessarily going to care about? And quite frankly, just might be caring about more of the fundamentals on the bull market. Fluence Energy is diluting. They probably are, because I see their stock is down. How much are we down? 10% right here. Fluence is down 6.3%. It was at 22.30, now 23.65. They're diluting for 117 million shares. 117 million shares. Files to sell 117. Navitas did the same thing last night. It was like 250 million. That stock, it was down 7. Now it's down 3. I mean, this market environment has been relatively okay with people diluting, because I think even the market knows that these stocks are up so much that like these companies kind of have an obligation to dilute. But we'll see if that dip gets bought or if that one ends up potentially going down. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other headlines that we got, and then we'll keep going into it. Earnings yesterday, they were not the best. The two big companies that I know everyone cares about are HIMS and ASTS. Did you see the Korean index emit yesterday? Yes, the Kospi fell like 2%, if I'm not wrong. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Yeah, it was down 2.29%. I mean, look at this chart. It's up 70% for the year. That's like if the S&P was up 70%. It's South Korea's version of the S&P. Falling 2% to me is not even kind of concerning. So, I mean, it's had a big run. It's probably going to take a break here and there, but it's not necessarily something that would insinuate the entire memory trade or the international trade is gone. HIMS, on the other hand, had a pretty ugly print. So the problem with HIMS was that revenue growth came in at 4%. Their guidance is for 30% for the year. So the next 3 quarters of 2026 are going to be pretty good, but this quarter, for some reason, Q1 was not good. Adjusted EBITDA margins, they're guiding for 10 to 12%. They're trying to get to $6.5 billion of revenue by 2030. It just wasn't a super exciting quarter. And I think when we saw a company like Rocket Lab that has been stuck for the past basically 7 months, so has HIMS, so has ASTS. If your stock has been stuck for a while, you need a bombastic earnings to really get the street to be excited. That's what Rocket Lab did with multiple partnerships, really good numbers, boom. I didn't know it would go up 50%, but the stock obviously definitely got a bit. HIMS did not do anything yesterday that was really exciting outside of growing a little bit more on their adjusted EBITDA margins. They also missed on EPS. Now, it was a tax thing for why they missed, but they missed pretty badly on that. That headline didn't look that good, and that's why the stock's down 15%. I don't know if this stock's going to stay down here. I mean, I kind of think 20 has become the floor to the stock. Maybe it goes below 20, but that would be going to levels that it was at 4 months ago, and it kind of normalized above that. The peptides thing is still, I think, a catalyst. It's just the lack of growth on the stock at 4%. It's hard for people to get excited about, this trading as a growth stock. So I can understand why it was down. Just didn't have the kind of core numbers it needed. Yeah, it's more of a second half story. I agree. And that would be a little bit more growth that people would be getting ready to see. ASTS, same story. I mean, they had relatively decent numbers for the size of the company that they are, and for the numbers that they had to put up. The problem is there was nothing that was super exciting like Rocket Lab had. I mean, you had multiple partnerships across the board. And I mean, ASTS, we listened to the call. I didn't think the call was that amazing or interesting. They said the common stuff that they have continued to say around Bluebird and the launches and how they're on track to meet all their goals by the second half of the year. This company is more about potential than it is the numbers. I think everyone who's in this company kind of knows that's a $32 billion company doing $14 million in revenue. You're not really investing in it, or ever have been investing in it for the revenue itself, but rather the fact that they're targeting $1 billion of revenue by fiscal year 2027. And so I feel like they're on track to achieve that. It's just the earnings itself was not some massive, massive quarter that got the street excited. And that's why that stock is down 9%. HIM's getting hit a little harder, down 15%. Now, both of these are shorted. So, I mean, I wonder if the shorts double down here, or maybe there's a little bit of, not a squeeze, but enough covering to try to get some of the shorts out of their position because they made a profit. But we'll see when the market opens kind of how the street interprets that. VG, they also had earnings today. That stock is up 6.5%. I've not gone through the full level of their earnings. I believe their guidance was raised, which is why the street was also excited about the print that they had. EPS was 0.19, 0.13 was expected. That was a beat. Revenue 4.6 versus 3.97. That was a beat by a hefty amount, and they were up 53% year over year on revenue. EBITDA guidance was raised massively, so this was the big thing. Street wanted 5.2 to 5.8 billion. EBITDA guidance was 8.2 to 8.5 billion, and that is why I think you're seeing the stock. It was up 10%. Now it is up 7.4%, 12.44. I mean, they're raising EBITDA guidance by 3 billion. So that to me definitely, could get people excited. It's just this stock has been a proxy for like war good, war bad in the context of oil going up or down. And so, I'm not sure how much it's going to trade on the fundamentals if oil, drops to 70, where VG would be fundamentally trading. But 12.47, that's green. as you've gotten a lot more momentum. Amit, did you say CPI data was bullish or bearish? CPI data was absolutely bearish. There is no world in which this CPI data is good. However, I think the takeaway is the market doesn't care about the CPI data. So we came in at 3.8 on the core, 3.8 on the headline, hottest since May of 2023. Core was 2.8, hottest since September 2025. Once again, just doesn't feel like the market actually cares right now. And that is what we've got. Amit, did you hear about the new ETF called BOT, which has Figure, Eptronic, and some big humanoid players? Yes, I heard about it. I, once again, am not the biggest fan of these ETFs that try to have private companies and take them public via some form of an ETF, primarily because, I mean, look, what is the valuation that you're getting? What are the fundamentals of the business? So if you really want humanoid exposure, then yeah, this is a vehicle to get access to that exposure. Then it also begs the question, what's the expense ratio you're paying? All these different things. But in general, I think there's other pure plays that you can just get into and wait before you get into a strategy like that. Now, granted, if those companies re-rate fundamentally, then yeah, this is going to be your proxy, right? Same thing for RVI. I think the reason RVI has been spiking as much as it is, up another 10% right here, is because of OpenAI. I think OpenAI continues to, I don't know what company in Robinhood's venture portfolio is spiking so aggressively to cause this type of a move. Is it, Databricks? Is it Stripe? I don't think so. I mean, those companies, Databricks could be interpreted as a software company to an extent. Stripe is a fintech, which the market doesn't care about. So what is spiking RBI, right? I think it's their stake in OpenAI as the market thinks OpenAI becomes more and more valuable. So maybe it's OpenAI that's causing this. So Figure and Eptronic, if this is in this BOT, ticker RoboStrategy ETF, I guess that they would need to re-rate in the private markets for this to go up. But that's what you'd be betting on more so than like doing due diligence on the actual companies themselves. RBI, that's up another 11.2%. It's doing better than Hood. Yeah, it is funny that it's doing better than Hood. I really think it's their OpenAI stake. If they didn't invest $75 million into OpenAI a couple of weeks ago, I wonder what, because I'm curious what in their venture portfolio has been re-rated, because everything they have is not like the sexy SpaceX's or the, Anthropics of the world. So I don't know what's causing the re-rating, but it likely is OpenAI, and maybe that's why the street's getting more excited. Rock Lab right there, down about 2.83%, down with ASTS. Nokia, that's down 2.4% as well, getting a little bit of a hit. All these stocks, Corning, etc., all going down a little bit. And I really mean a little bit. It's like less than 1% or 1%. So we'll see when the market opens if that quote unquote dip. Micron got to like 760 last night, and people were freaking out that it was down from like 790. But, is that really a dip? We're going to see if the market allows that to actually be a dip when it opens, or if it continues to go down. Qualcomm as well. It was up 5% yesterday, now down 3.4% right here. GameStop, real quick, let's cover this. GameStop is down 1.6%. It was up 10% yesterday. Roaring Kitty tweeted yesterday. Roaring Kitty is the person who led the GameStop revolution back in 2021, but his account got hacked. And so given his account got hacked, he tweeted a meme coin crypto address, and the coin went from 1 million to 7 million in market cap. But because he was hacked, he ended up deleting whoever deleted the tweets. And this was the picture of what he tweeted. So he probably made a decent chunk of change by just dumping as soon as people pumped up this coin. And if you were trading GameStop and it went up 10%, you had some exit liquidity. But it all went back down. It would be kind of crazy if he came back, because it would have been like, wow, we're really in the thick of a bull market, right? You got Roaring Kitty coming back. Like, that is as bullish as you can get in terms of just like broader bull market shenanigans. I don't know if it's actually quote unquote bullish for him to be back. But it was fake. He was hacked. So, and I don't think he would chill a meme coin. The guy's worth like a lot of money. I don't know if he's doing this for a couple $1 million to make a meme coin. So, but then again, how did he get hacked, right? Like, did he sell his account? Like, who hacked into his account? It's a pretty powerful account. So I would imagine he keeps it secure, but he did get hacked yesterday. And that's why we saw some more of that volatility with GameStop. Tesla exploded yesterday at 445. Tesla to invest an extra $250 million for annual USD production of 18 gigawatts of battery cells in Germany. Okay, so you got Tesla making an investment. Burry did it. Yeah, Burry did it. Tesla right there, 440. That's down about 1.1%. 445 was where it was yesterday. Tesla to invest an extra $250 million for annual production of battery cells in Germany. Another headline right here: Trump is backing measures to lower living costs, including the Senate's housing bill and a temporary gas tax holiday. Analysts say the move may have come too late to ease voter anger over high inflation and cost of living pressures ahead of elections per Punch Bowl. The interesting thing is the midterms are not that far away. We started this war in March 4th. It is now May 12th. It has gone on much longer than the 4 to 6 weeks that was projected. So I wonder what their internal polling looks like at the White House around how aggressive the midterm outlook is looking like in regards to voters and their fears about the economy. Now, we've been covering this over the past couple of days. Consumers are not doing that well. Like, they're just not. And forget the labor market claims, which have shown, not that much layoffs across the board. So on an aggregate data, labor market is relatively okay. But consumer credit went from 12 to 24 billion in the month of March. Auto delinquencies and credit card delinquencies reached all-time highs yesterday, as per Bloomberg. And you've got the K-shaped economy kind of going into effect, right? You got a really ugly inflation print, the worst in almost 2.5 years, and the markets are barely hurt because the stock market is fundamentally disconnected from what's going on with consumers in the real world. Why? Because although a Whirlpool might be down 30% for the year, and the CEO said we have seen the worst demand for our products since the great financial crisis, aka consumers are not buying fridges and washers and dryers and all that stuff, Meta continues to increase their CapEx spend, which means companies like Corning will always have earnings to look forward to if they've got those types of contracts and they don't need to necessarily worry about the consumer. And so I think from that perspective, you do have that disconnect, but if that disconnect continues to be disconnected, then obviously the markets will probably price it in and be able to move on, at least in the short term. IGV getting a little bit of a bid. The only reason I think IGV is up right now is because the semis are down. They started going down last night. They're down in the pre-market. SMH down 2%. I mean, if that continues, maybe software keeps going up. If that flips, then software probably goes down. Here are a couple people from Goldman talking about what's going on in software that I thought was actually very interesting yesterday.
So I would say until very recently, maybe last 6-8 weeks, there was actually a bias for people wanting to buy these things, right? Oh, how much worse could it get? They're down so much.
Right.
That has changed in the last month or so. There is just complete neglect. There's apathy. I don't ever want to look at these things ever again. I think the tough part is, particularly for our hedge fund clients who need shorts, you can't really be short software.
No.
Here.
It's
right.
too dangerous.
Right. So where within tech can you find, at a minimum, relative shorts, but ideally absolute shorts? And, what we've seen lately is people start to pivot kind of more towards the payments. We talked about it earlier, but Visa, MasterCard, Amex have been relative laggards, actually all making, I think, new relative lows over the last couple of weeks. Amex last week, the numbers were tremendous. Stock went down, not up.
Yes.
Right. So I think there's a desire for the tech PMs who can be short no more software. To find other avenues to be short that has some tech exposure in it.
Okay. Let's turn to financials.
So the argument he's making right there is that you can't be short software because at the end of the day, software is so low, but you're looking for something to short because you're super long your semiconductor stocks, your tech stocks. So what do? You short anything else that exists. And this chart right here, I think, is indicative of that. This is every single sector besides semis. As you can see right here, from last year, May of 2025 to May of 2026, energy, financials, healthcare, consumer staples, consumer services, utilities, technology, all of them have fundamentally underperformed the semiconductor names. And financials is the most concerning to me because, for a bull market to not have the banks participate is just weird, given the bank should be raking in the fees and helping with consumer credit, lending, IPOs, mergers and acquisitions. That's just not happening because this bull market is fueled primarily through CapEx, and the beneficiaries are the companies that are obviously getting that CapEx. S&P 500 earnings have been beating like crazy. As you can see right here, this was the Q1 2025 earnings beat. It was almost $80 a share, higher than expectations that people expected. But the projected 2027 semis ETF, which is what you've got right there, is massive compared to 2025. So 2025, Street was expecting about $200 a share of earnings. 2027, the Street is now expecting $550 of earnings. And that's your story. That's your simple story. And that's why the market, again, is getting as exciting as it is about, where the Street is going when it comes to semiconductors. Kopin, they also had earnings today. This is another name that's part of that AI trade. That stock is up 12.7%. This is sub billion company. Again, some of these more smaller names continue to have decent numbers. Revenues, 10 million. That's up 0% year over year. Product revenues, 5.4 million. That's down 41% year over year. It looks like their contracts were kind of the main reason the street loved it. The numbers themselves are not super headline beat and raise oriented, but it feels like a few military contracts is what's getting the street to be a bit more excited right now in what they're doing. And I think, so again, Kopin, electronics manufacturer, best known for its microdisplay devices and application-specific optical solutions for defense, enterprise, and medical consumer mobile electronics. Optics continues to be incredibly important, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But even with numbers that aren't that incredible, again, you're looking at 0% revenue growth from Q1 2025 to Q1 2026, the market doesn't care. And it's likely because they are continuing to gain contracts in the optics space, which is likely going to lead to that growth. I want to play a couple minutes right here from this video that has been part of a lot of my due diligence on trying to understand why optics is becoming so important. This is from Corning's factory tour, and I think this will give a little bit of context on why the market is starting to shift to photonics right now.
Fast forward to 2025, and Corning announced its Gorilla Glass factory in Kentucky will be 100% devoted to making glass for Apple. But Corning's largest and fastest growing business is optical communications. Fiber-based broadband makes up the majority of the internet's backbone, with billions of miles of cable, some subsea, connecting continents, data centers, businesses, and homes, and transmitting information at nearly the speed of light. Unlike traditional copper phone lines that transmit information as electrical signals, fiber optic cables are tiny bendable strands of glass where data is sent through as photons, lasers emitting pulses of light at far higher speed using less energy.
Moving photons is between 5 and 20 times lower power usage than moving electrons. So basically, as power becomes a bigger and bigger issue, fiber inevitably gets closer and closer and closer to the compute.
In 1970, Corning invented the first glass fiber so pure it had low enough signal loss to be used.
So that sentence right there by the Corning CEO kind of gives you a pretty, basic understanding of why optics is starting to become so important and why all these companies are investing as heavily as they're investing in optical communication. Copper is just not enough to be able to transmit the light that's needed or the signals that are needed between GPUs communicating. So it has to go closer to the speed of light. And that's where you're getting fiber optics coming into play. Obviously, we're seeing that with companies like AAOI, Lumentum, Coherent. All of these names have caught a massive bid, primarily because in January, Jensen kind of set the standard by investing in these companies, but also basically claiming that copper would not be the basis by which optical communication scales across the level of compute that we need. Now, Corning has been a company. Corning's been around since Einstein. I mean, it's been a company for a very, very long time, and they've adapted and changed over and over for a while. They had a boom and bust back in the 2000s as well. But now the reason they're booming again is because it looks like this AI build out will continue to be as massive as it is. And it's why Lumentum, Coherent, all these companies are catching the bids as the market continues to say that, all right, the CapEx will continue to be flowing into them. And quite frankly, CPO, co-packaged optics, along with memory, is now seen as the two largest bottlenecks. And the memory names just have done a lot better than the CPO names, but obviously the CPO names are still super, super important. This is a nice graphic of all the companies that NVIDIA has invested in by Tanner right here. As you can see, they've invested about 14 billion and they've made 51 billion. So they're up 280% on average. In terms of all the investments, you got Nokia, Marvell, Coherent, Light, Synopsys, Corning, CoreWeave, Intel. They had a couple others that they already sold their investments, but these investments have done relatively well. And this ETF, you could say, of NVIDIA's investments are kind of them bringing everyone on the journey to be able to continue moving the street forward and forward to get the market to be much more excited. And that leads me into the sheet that I've been working on. So let's put it out there for everybody right now. The one thing that's not working on this yet is the connection to a financial API. So I have a financial API. It wasn't able to get fully connected yet. This will be a living and breathing website. It turned it into a website instead of a Google Sheet. Right now, relatively basic, that has all the information I want it to have. I'm putting the link right there in the chat. It's called aibuildouts.com, but it will have a lot more sophisticated stuff pretty soon in regards to financial APIs being part of it. So what is the website? At its core, it's 250 companies that are part of this industrial build out when it comes to AI. And the goal of it is is essentially a culmination of aggregating watch lists together to try to find certain names that we haven't thought about that are part of this ecosystem. So for example, this is a name that I found as I was going through the entirety of the sheet. You have ITT, which is involved heavily in data centers, up 18% year to date. It's an $18 billion company. I've never heard of this company before. Well, that's green. And you're starting to see some momentum. Giga Cloud Technology, also part of the data center build out. That's only up 1% year to date. Maybe it's a crappy company, but maybe there's an opportunity here because they haven't had a re-rating, just like Rackspace Technologies was up 80% in a day because they had one of those quarters that had a re-rating. And before that 80% move, it was barely up 2% for the year. So the goal of this is to really say, hey, can we go into every sector that there is? Data center construction, cooling and thermal. You have obviously your neoclouds, your cloud scalers, your nuclear and grid energy, semi-materials and EDA, packaging, industrial, edge AI, et cetera, battery and power storage, rare earths, and see where are these companies and is there real due diligence that we can do on them? I think the broader goal of this is not to just say, pick a ticker on this and invest. The broader goal of this is say, hey, what is the company? What do they do? You have your basic summary right there explaining it. And then over the coming days, we're going to have financial APIs attached to it. What I wanted to do is attach the year to dates of all these stocks and then put them kind of lined up by their PE ratios, price of sales, et cetera. It's just that didn't fully work out with my financial API because it takes a little bit more time to connect all the data, but I have the data, it just needs to connect to it. And then you'll have a much broader sense of like, okay, here's a company that's up 2% this year. What's their price of sales? What's their PE ratio? What's their earnings projection? Can that actually increase? Because quite frankly, that's how a lot of these names have been found in the first place, right? A Corning that was up like 10% going into January and February ended up going up another 90% because they had an earnings re-rating that was coming. Same thing with Amcor. Same thing with the VRTs of the world before they got into the S&P 500. VRT, by the way, just massive, massive move yesterday in the cooling space. I was doing a lot more research about them yesterday, up 109% for the year. It is scary to want to buy some of these names given they are up so much. But I also think it's kind of inevitable that you either wait for a dip that might happen or might not happen, or you close your eyes and you DCA. And it's tough, right? Because there are certain names where, you know, it's hard to buy them. There's certain things where I'm sure people draw the line, like a SanDisk. People are like, I'm just not buying that up 400%. But there's other names that are up 50 to 60% where you just have to be like, look, I usually wouldn't buy a stock up 50 to 60%, but in this scenario, I'm probably going to have to swallow my pride, do some hard due diligence and see if I like it. And then if it goes down, I'll be happy because I'll be able to meaningfully DCA at scale. And so that is kind of the core thing that we've got going on here. So if anyone has these suggestions or ideas on how to make this better, please message me. If anyone wants to incorporate any due diligence, message me as well. But it's going to get a lot more sophisticated once we bring in all the numbers. I think at its core, hopefully, if you can just go through a lot of this stuff, I would say maybe 100 out of the 256 companies are companies that people know. And the rest of them are names that were even new to me. And I'm looking at these names like, holy crap, this is like a really important company. It's up 20%. Okay, at least it's not up 300%. Is it as good as a fundamental company as like a Micron? Probably not. But that's also where the opportunity is because it's less discovered. And, you know, if they can re-rate on their earnings, then maybe there's a chance that we get some more excitement. This is going to be updated daily. Yeah, that is the goal. There's a lot of different companies that can be put in there, and it's very easy to update it. So there it is right there, aibuildouts.com. We will try to make it a lot better going forward. Navitas is dumping. Are they? Navitas is down 5%. Okay, a little bit of dilution. Potentially, we'll see when the market opens if the street's upset about that. Are you including non-US companies? No, not non-US companies. I just think it's harder for a lot of people to invest in those non-US companies. So kind of keeping it straight. No OTC, no companies that you have to like submit an application to be able to invest in. Trying to keep it as simple as possible, but also as practical as possible to try to get some more reasonable content out of it. Okay, so let's look at a couple other main headlines that we have, and then we'll continue going through some of this other stuff. Cuba, it looks like Trump is really serious about wanting it. No Republican has ever spoken to me about Cuba, which is a failed country and only heading in one direction down. Cuba is asking for help, and we are going to talk. In the meantime, I'm off to China. Part of the reason I think Tesla was up yesterday is because Tesla will be attending the ceremony with the Chinese delegation, but it's not just Tesla. And I pinned the message, by the way, for those that are missing the link. So if you go to the chat, it should be pinned. It's going to be a lot more companies. It's going to be MasterCard, Visa, Meta, Micron. The CEO of Micron is going to China. So you got the CEO of Micron becoming very, very important now if he's going on these trips with Trump. You got BlackRock's Larry Fink, Tim Cook, Goldman Sachs, Cisco. Jensen and Lisa are not going, which is a little weird. You would think they would be going, but I also think Trump wants to negotiate for the chips, and he doesn't want two people there that are, obviously going to be potentially begging China to buy their chips, right? He wants that as a negotiating tool, and so I think that's why he's not having Jensen and Lisa come there as well. So it's kind of interesting what this Chinese meeting will look like. It's also very interesting to see, what Trump is going to do in the context of China and Iran as he continues to talk to President Xi, and I hope it's going to be a good meeting. But I would imagine Xi is not happy about what's going on with Iran, and if he's not, then where's the negotiation that comes through when it basically results in either a war that continues or a war that doesn't continue or a new war that starts with Cuba if we're actually going after Cuba. So again, geopolitical volatility and instability, oil continue to get a bid because of that. But again, the market doesn't care. I think Tesla will announce a major battery deal with China this week. If that's the reason why Elon's there, that could get the street definitely excited. I really do think Tesla was up yesterday just because of that China headline and just being in good graces with the president. But it could have also just been Tesla repricing to be Tesla, but there wasn't any major fundamental headline. D-Wave had earnings. I'm just seeing they beat on EPS by 150%. We do have a quantum IPO coming up this week, which is helping all the quantum stocks. Revenue, they missed by 30%. D-Wave is down 6%. Year over year, their revenue grew negative 81%, 2.9 million versus 4.1 million expected. EPS did grow 50%. So the beat on EPS, a miss on revenue. That stock is down 6% right here. Bookings are up 2,000%. That is correct. So you do have bookings that are up. Revenue is down. IONQ is flat. This one got a massive bid yesterday. Lumentum, that's down 3%. AAOI is down 2.64%. Jim Cramer said stay away from AAOI last night. So take that for what it's worth. But that stock down 2%. Copen, looks like the street does not care about revenue growth here. That stock up 20%, continuing to get a bid as the market is more excited about this. Amazon rolling out 30-minute delivery on thousands of groceries and essentials. That just rolled out this morning. Amazon Now is new ultra-fast delivery service, bringing thousands of items like fresh groceries and household essentials to you in 30 minutes. It's not rolling out everywhere, but it is rolling out in a decent number of spots across the country. That's why the market's excited about that. Here's another reason I think RVI is up. OpenAI got re-rated. Why did OpenAI get re-rated? Because of this headline. OpenAI is capping Microsoft's revenue share at $38 billion. Remember 2 weeks ago when we saw that headline that Microsoft is exiting its non-exclusive relationship with OpenAI? Part of the reason for that is because OpenAI, I think, is trying to share or not share as much revenue as they don't have to share. So under the old structure, Microsoft's 20% revenue share could have reached roughly $135 billion if OpenAI hit the long-term targets. The information reports that the renegotiated deal caps that at $38 billion. Microsoft still owns about 27% of OpenAI. But OpenAI can no longer defer payments to Microsoft. This means it could pay Microsoft about $6 billion of its projected $30 billion revenue this year instead of the roughly $4 billion that it had projected, and Microsoft still gets resale rights and their payments through 2030. That's probably why the private markets are more excited about OpenAI, because that's a lot of revenue, almost $100 billion that OpenAI does not have to give up to Microsoft and doesn't have to become exclusive. Robinhood Ventures, VCX, they have stakes in OpenAI. So if OpenAI was valued at $820 billion, maybe it's closer to like $950 billion. And that's what, and Anthropic's basically at $1 trillion right now. So, those two put together is probably getting the street to be a bit more excited. Karp met with Zelensky again. This is new photos that was released. I believe he went there last week, it seems like, or over the weekend. And so you've got Palantir and Karp with Zelensky in Ukraine. Again, the stock, when it comes to Palantir, not really getting a massive bid. You're getting a little bit more movement today, but someone said something to me yesterday, and I think I agree with this in the context of software. I think the street has decided we don't know who the software winner is going to be 5 years from now when all of this is said and done. But we know the winner right now is going to be the picks and shovels that are building out this industrial revolution. And so we're just going to bet on them. But we don't know if Palantir, Salesforce, Adobe, ServiceNow get completely commoditized or they're going to be totally okay. If you're a bull, you basically say to the street, you're dead wrong, and I know these companies are going to be fine, and thank you for the cheap shares. If you're a bear, you either agree that you need to rotate out of the software stocks, and if you're neutral, you kind of wait on the sidelines and wait to see what ends up happening with these names. And so even companies like AppLovin, Reddit, Palantir that have put up massive levels of growth, once again, if they're not going to get that much love from the street's perception of them as software companies, then I think the street's going to wait and see. Now, eventually, I think they will catch a bid because I'm in the camp that software is not literally dead. But if this is how the street is treating it, then, and it's not just software, it's the Metas and Microsofts of the world also get hit. By the way, speaking of software and Microsoft got freaking sold off by Chris Hone, who's a massive investor. They had a huge stake in the company. They slashed it by $8 billion. And the reason for that in the article that came out yesterday is because they are concerned about software. Basically, Chris Hone and his portfolio manager said, we are concerned that the changing of software will create a fundamental paradigm shift in Office 365, and legacy software companies will be commoditized by the model companies that will inundate the intermediation layer in regards to those software offerings. And we're going to get a lot more 13Fs filed pretty soon by some of these big investors. I wonder if they're going to be betting on buying the ServiceNows and the Adobes and the Microsofts of the world, or if they're actually going to be dumping it with the rest of the market. But you're getting some big investors basically saying, we just don't know what's going to happen with software. And it's easier to know what's going to happen with CPUs, which is why we're buying Intel or AMD. But obviously time will tell to see how this ends up officially playing out. Netflix, are we red? We are a little green on net. Wow, it fell to 85 last night. I didn't even see that. He also sold Google at 115. Well, see, this is the thing. When someone says a big cap stock or a large cap tech stock is dead, like they said about Google back in 2025, it tends to be a little bit more of a bottom signal. I know people are saying that about Meta and Microsoft right now. I feel like these are absolute buys. You just buy them and don't look at them. But that software narrative is, Google had an antitrust narrative and a search is dead narrative. This entire sector of software has a software is dead narrative in the context of AI. And I think that's the bigger issue. It's just funny because Microsoft also is a cloud business. So it's like, the fact that they're even discounting that just means they hate the legacy software business that much. All right, here we go. We got 30 seconds. Let's see what happens and what we've got going on. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is going to be an interesting day. CPI came in at 3.8%. Obviously wasn't very good. 2023. Let's do the green or red poll right here, see what people think. You've also got the semis that are going absolutely crazy. I really wonder, we're getting a little bit of a semis dip from the pre-market. Does that continue? Does that rotate? Or does the show continue going on in this bull market for semis? Tuesday, May 12th, 9:30 a.m., the stock market is now open. All right, it is time to wake your ass up. We are red across the board based on what we're looking at right here. S&P is 736.53. That is down 0.37%. Google loses 390. It was at 400 on Friday, 387. That's down 0.37%. Meta is going down, 594, down 0.76%. Their PE ratio is now below 18 on a forward basis. Reddit is down. Palantir is down. IONQ is up. So you got some of the quantum stocks that are up. D-Wave is still down 5.4%. Corning is down 3%. Lumentum is down 4%. AAOI is down 2.1%. IGV was green and now it's red. So you're not even seeing a software rotation yet, which means it's kind of like everything is red, at least right now. VG, that's up 8%. ASTS is down 8%. You do have a green candle on ASTS that's trying to come up a little bit higher. Fluence Energy, they diluted. That's down 8. Micron's down 3. Let's see if this gets bought. 765 is where it bounced yesterday. Hit 762 so far. You're already getting a little bit of a bounce off 762. Let's see if the buyers step in and this thing gets back up to 790. Rocket Lab down 1.8%. Nokia down 4.3%. Ondas is down 1.1%. SoFi, Anthony Noto bought another 15,000 shares yesterday. He's bought $500,000 worth of shares in the past week. So you got Noto who's buying the dip. Poet goes red, well, slightly green, but it's down from where it was yesterday. The VIX is up 2% Oil's up 3%. Iran is up 1%. DRAM's down 5.8. GitLab's down 12. GitLab laid off people yesterday. I don't know why the stock is down. They didn't reduce their guidance. All they said was they were announcing layoffs in the street. Still took it down. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's down. 10-year. Oh my goodness, this 10-year is pumping. And why wouldn't it be? Wow, folks, we're at 4.5. Oh my goodness, we're at 4.5. We haven't had 4.5 since. We haven't had 4.5. Ironically, we have not had 4.5 since May of 2025. 1 year later, the 10-year continues to be at just a horrible space. Now, the market doesn't care about it, obviously, but I mean, does the market eventually care about it? I don't know. Obviously, CPI went up, oil went up, so inflation expectations went up, which means people are going to be selling off their bonds and trying to get a higher yield, which means yields will be going up. And that's why we're seeing that start to go vertical. And Novix, that's down 1%. Amazon, that's down 0.5% as well. What else are we seeing right here? ARM is down 1.2. NVIDIA, 219. Our semis trying to make a little bit of a comeback. AAOI just flipped green. SMH is still down 2, not really getting a bounce right there. Circle is still up. It looks like the Clarity Act feels more likely than not, just based on Circle's price action. I know we're still waiting on clarity for that act, but right now we don't know. End of May supposedly is the timeline. Palantir trying to flip green. So is Reddit, which just flipped green. Meta as well trying to go up. It's interesting. The semis are down, but the software names are not really benefiting from it. IGV is down 1%. That just sucks, right? Like if one sector is down, you would think some of the money goes to the other sectors, but I guess the CPI was ugly enough and the macro is a little annoying enough for the street to not even rotate. Corning down 3. Did Copen get halted? Did it actually get halted? Wow, got halted. 23% is not enough to create a halt, though. That's weird. I guess there was that much volume coming. Well, there's probably a stock that doesn't have crazy amounts of volume, so that's probably why for the first time it is getting that volume. Copen right there, that's halted. We'll see how that one changes. Iran, that's up 3%, 56.80. Nebius, which has earnings tomorrow, that is down about 1.82%. CoreWeave is down 5%. Okay, CoreWeave kind of ugly, 135 to 108 in 2 days. So that one's obviously taking a pretty ugly haircut right here. Netflix, a little bit more green as well, 86.58. So I guess some of that money's rotating. NVIDIA, out of all the semis, goes green. This is the only semi that I'm seeing that's green. Let's go to the semis watch list right here. Yeah, literally it's NVIDIA. AMD's down, Supermicro's down, Intel's down. Intel down 4%. On Semiconductor down, Broadcom down, Marvell, TSM, Lam Research, ARM, Dell, Micron. Micron's still not losing. Well, no, it lost 762 for a second, bounced off 760. Let's see if it actually loses 760 or if that's basically where it bottomed at yesterday. We saw this last week. I think we literally saw this last Tuesday. Micron went from 650 to 628 for like 10 minutes, and then that dip got bought. I wouldn't be surprised to see if that happens again. TSM loses 400. Marvell loses 170. Broadcom loses 425. ASML down about 2.24%. AMD is trying to flip green, but not there yet. NVIDIA at 220. VG up 8%. ASTS, again, not the best earnings, but stock was also down a lot worse when the market had the results. C Limited had amazing results. They beat revenue by like $100 by like $1 billion or something. I'm getting the number wrong, but let me pull it up. It was a crazy beat for C Limited. Yeah, it was like $500 million. Street expected $6.4 billion. They came in at $7.1 billion of revenue, 47% revenue growth. Massive beat for that company. It's been really dead money for the past couple months, so it's nice to see that one getting a little bit more of a bid. Rocket Lab, did we reverse? We have reversed. I think it is obvious the street has chosen Rocket Lab as their SpaceX proxy. And I think a lot of people thought that would happen months ago. It's happening. I mean, yeah, the results and the earnings were amazing, but I really do think the street has recognized that if they want to play SpaceX, they might not have to buy SpaceX. And if the results that Rocket Lab continues to put up are as strong as they are, you know, you're getting some pretty damn good execution. 120 right there, even with ASTS down 7%. Rocket Lab diverging from ASTS, very impressive. Very, very impressive at scale, to be honest. Copen, is that unhalted? Unhalted drops from 630 to 580. We'll see if that continues. Where's GameStop? GameStop is down 3%. Qubit had a good earnings. It's up 40%. I haven't dived as deep into those numbers to understand the magnitude of the move or why the magnitude of the move. It is a smaller company. We also have a bunch of quantum IPOs coming up, but the earnings were relatively decent. That stock up 35% right here on the day. I think Rocket Lab is mainly pumping because the Anduril partnership. Yeah, I think that's also part of the reason. I mean, I think that's kind of solidifying Rocket Lab as like they've been in the defense space for a while, but Anduril is just so hot in the defense space that, a lot of the big contracts for these physical companies, right? Companies that are not just selling software like Rocket Lab is defense oriented. And so partnering with Anduril probably just leads to a lot of doors that can open for them, which I think the street is excited about. Google 385, SPY is down 0.5%. I don't think we've had a negative 1% day on the SPY in a couple weeks. And if we have, it was recovered intraday, even if not fully. But down 1% we haven't seen in a minute. The 16% gain on the S&P 500 over the past 6 weeks is the 11th biggest 6-week gain for the index since 1950. It's the only example in the top 20 that did not occur either during a bear market or soon after a bear market low, as per aggregated data since 1950. So usually when you have a 16% 6-week return, it's after a bear market. March decline technically was not an actual bear market. I mean, we weren't even down 9%. So peak to trough. So the fact that we're getting this type of run, it really is unprecedented. The SOX is 60% above its 200-day moving average for the first time since March of 2000. And, the RSI on SanDisk was like 95 yesterday on the monthly. Like these stocks are not just overextended. They are seriously overextended. But once again, the market is overlooking that, even with a hot CPI print. And it's just going to be a question of how long can the market overlook that, or does the market need to overlook that if the earnings growth is as substantial as it is? Micron gets 770 back, so still below 780, but above 770. Which is nice. Yeah, NASDAQ was down 7% year to date at the low. It wasn't even really, it felt horrible because there was so much emotional whiplash back and forth with the war, but it wasn't really as aggressive as what we even experienced in April of 2025. So the rebound from here has been, we are getting like a April, May 2025 rebound without having that ugly of a drawdown, which is why the all-time highs are even more impressive because, we fell 30% in April of 2025. And then we ended up recovering 37% over the next couple of months. We only really felt 8.5%, but we've recovered double that in the past 6 weeks, which is just incredible. But again, it's not all companies. It's many of the semis. Wow, AAOI. It's going for 200. 7% up on the day as that goes green. Again, optics just becoming the most important bottleneck when it comes to chips along with memory. And I think the street's getting much more excited for that. Joby, that's down 2%. GoPro is down 17%. You had Archer, which is down 1.3% as well. Yeah, honestly, as soon as Kramer said stay away from it, there you go. Lumentum also trying to flip green. Okay, this might be a repeat of Tuesday of last week, where the memory stocks were down for like or not just memory stocks, but the semi stocks were down for 2 seconds. And then you had your rebound. NVIDIA, 222.32. I think that's a new all-time high for NVIDIA. That is an all-time high for NVIDIA. Let's see if we can crack 223. 222 was resistance yesterday as well. So we need to see if that can get a move up. ARM is also green, 213. That's green. Do you think NVIDIA is going to get a China deal? I don't know. I think the stock's pumping outside of NVIDIA getting a China deal because, I'm not sure if Trump is ready to officially give out a China deal. I don't even know if the CCP wants to do it, given how much they're relying on Huawei right now. But even if they have China revenues go to zero, growing 81% without China is still pretty damn impressive. SoFi goes red. Fastly, 0.5% down, but that's recovering a little bit from the lows. ELF down 2%, CleanSpark down 2.7%, Keel down 3.4%, and Novix down 1%, and Amazon down 1.6%. Well, we have Technical Tuesday today. Yes, we should have that today after the close. I think we have a couple earnings today. Then we'll have TT. Oklo is the big company today. Yeah, so we'll go right into TT after we get Oklo. BlackBerry down 3.6. EOSC down 4%. This thing was $9.10 yesterday. Oracle, that's down 2.8%. ServiceNow had a little bit of a move in the pre-market at 93, right back down, dumped to 89 on the day. OSS, that continues to get another bid. Let's see if it can go for 16.44. I think that's where it topped out last week. Microsoft is $8 away from going below 400. Which would be a little crazy if that actually ends up happening. Amcor down 2%, Mercado Libre down 0.5%, Verizon down 0.46%, Rocket Lab going back to 120, GameStop 2.93%, Palantir 135.97. Did eToro have good earnings? I did not see their earnings, but they're down 3.9%. We'll get their numbers in a second. But eToro is down. By the way, B. Riley maintained a neutral rating on ASTS, but they raised their price target to 85 from 75. So they do have a couple upgrades today, which is really good. Trump just did a radio interview. He said, I am confident Iran will stop enriching uranium by 100%. We will get all of Iran's nuclear dust. We are conducting direct communications with Iranian officials, and we are not in a hurry to reach an agreement. China is strong, but we're stronger than China militarily. I think that quote about him saying we don't have to rush anything is because the market, once again, is not forcing him to rush anything, which is putting him in a really good scenario when it comes to negotiating because he's not that worried about how the market's acting. Wow, NVIDIA 223. There she goes. New all-time high for Mr. NVIDIA. AAOI as well, back to $200 or approaching $200, $201, up 8.8%. The other semi names are not green yet, but if NVIDIA is leading the pack, I would imagine they flip. ARM flipped. Micron's still down, but it's up at 777. Dell is down from 260 after Trump said to buy Dell. Marvell's down 1%. Lam Research down 2%. Nebius right here, 184. What do people think about Nebius tomorrow? Do people think this thing pumps on good results, or is too much of it priced in? I'm kind of curious how this, I mean, if it dumps to 160, who cares, right? Like it is what it is. Like if it takes a breather, it takes a breather, but could it pump to 200 instead? Could this thing like get really, really exciting? eToro, by the way, they beat EPS by 30%, 91 cents versus 70 cents expected, up 18% year-over-year. Revenue, they beat by 954%, 2.4 billion versus 233 million. However, year-over-year growth was down 30% for revenue. I think Nebius is all priced in. Yeah, I mean, obviously, look, the stock's had a massive move. It could pull a CoreWeave where CoreWeave was at not all-time highs, but close to all-time highs before the print, and then it just dumped. I still don't get why CoreWeave dumped. Like, I still, like, last quarter there was some headline we could point to around supply. I still don't know exactly what got the street upset about CoreWeave. Tesla just flipped green. ARM at 216. Lumentum just flipped green. Rocket Lab 119.26. NVIDIA 223.40. 5.42 trillion on Mr. NVIDIA. Meta's trying to flip green. Reddit continues to get hit. Reddit's in the doghouse now. I think Reddit might be in the doghouse. I don't know what the street wants, but if they're treating it like App and Meta, then all the advertising plays are just not getting a lot of love. Palantir flipped green. AppLovin just flipped green. Still down a lot from its highs, but getting a little bit of a move right there. Coherent is still down. Bloom flipped green as well. Shopify is about to flip green. Shopify got hit the worst, I think, over the past week when it comes to the software name. ServiceNow still red. That one not flipping. Zeta, did we flip green on that? It's about to. It's 2 cents away. Kind of weird, though. The semis are not necessarily down. The software is not getting the sector rotation. It's kind of like individual names going up or down in the semis and in software. CoreWeave still down 4%. IREN's up 2%. NVIDIA trying to push 224. Rocket Lab's having its Palantir moment. Yeah, I mean, if Rocket Lab ends the year at 150 or something, I think it's officially had that type of a moment. The thing that could get it there, it would be S&P inclusion, but they're not going to be profitable for a long enough time this year to get into the S&P. But I mean, 2027, it looks like that would be the massive catalyst for them and the NASDAQ potentially. And that's where you could see a little bit more excitement. Qualcomm, this stock is going down 5.4%, 224. Okay, so again, yeah, not all the semis are participating here. Trump says we have to do tariffs a different way and make them efficient. I want to charge more on tariffs. Okay. I'm not sure exactly what tariffs he's talking about. Maybe the EU car tariffs, but we're going to have to see. Again, midterms are coming up. He's got a couple months to make his case to the American people by November about why they should continue to vote for him. And the one thing he can say is, hey, your 401ks are up, but the question is going to be, is that enough if, the price of gas and the cost of living continues to be up as well? S&P 735.93. That continues to go down. QSI, that's up a little bit as well. Navitas, are we getting a dump? They did dilute today, so you are seeing a pretty nasty 8% move down there, but it also was up 20% last week, or yesterday. It was up 20%. Will 401ks be up by the midterms? That's a great question. I mean, basically, that question is implying, are we going to get a crash before the midterms? Which would, that would be horrendous for Trump. If Tom Lee's thesis ends up playing out and, you're looking at 6,000 S&P going into October, Q4 rally would be crazy, but the Q4 rally also would happen in the middle of the midterms, which I don't know if it's going to be enough to get people super excited. Tesla, by the way, loses 447 within like 2 seconds, right back down to 439 as that one goes down. It's just every time I think of Tom's thesis and try to make sense of what he's saying, I try to ask myself what would be the catalyst for that type of a catastrophic drawdown. Not 5%, not 7%, but 15 to 20%. And his argument is the Fed chair. That's the catalyst every time. And maybe it's going to happen again. The other thing, by the way, we didn't talk about this based on this new CPI data. If you're just joining, it was at 3.8% versus 3.6%, the worst since May of 2023. The futures for the Fed probabilities are now pricing in a 35.7% chance of a rate hike in 2026. Now, I don't think we're going to hike, but the Fed futures are theorizing to the tune of 35.7% that we will hike. We don't have a cut baked in until September 2027. And by the way, that cut is 9.5% of a chance to even get a cut. That's the first time you even start to see any meaningful probability for a cut coming in. So, I guess the market's just going to have to be okay with not having a rate cut. And this entire rally has not been fueled by macro liquidity. It's been fueled by earnings growth. So maybe the rate cut doesn't even matter, which is why the CPI print doesn't matter that much for the market either. ASTS, once again, back down 9.4%. But could a lack of a rate cut be the reason that the show gets a little stalled in regards to the market? I don't think we're going to hike. But then again, Kevin Warsh, once he gets in, Trump can't do anything. Trump literally can't do anything. Once he's in, it's like a Supreme Court justice. Once you're in for life. Now, in this case, you're in for 6 years. But the point is, him and Trump can have a horrible relationship for the next 6 years, and Trump can't do anything about it. So if he wants to hike, obviously Trump would lose his mind if he tries to hike. But if he wants to, technically, he'll probably have enough data to justify it if he thinks it needs to happen. Clean spark right there, down about 4.5%. I don't think he will, though, because, again, Kevin Warsh is a believer in AI and the deflationary aspects of AI. He's talked very openly about how that could obviously create a lot of issues in the labor market, which would create a lot of issues for consumer demand, which obviously would lead to more deflation more than inflation if people just stop buying stuff, which begs the question around the actual substance of the economy more than inflation. But we're going to have to see how the market ultimately interprets it. ELF down 2% as Trump continues to talk more about tariffs. And your consumer stocks getting hit. AAOI again at 200, down from 208, but at 201. As that continues to go green. Washington is conducting closed-door talks with Denmark on expanding its military presence in Greenland with 3 new bases planned in the south of the island to monitor Russia and China. Okay. I guess we're going back to Greenland. Celsius down 5. This stock cannot get any energy added to its price here. That continues to go down. By the way, 3M is joining, that stock down 0.5%, is joining the data center optical communications. 3M announced it has joined a group of leading technology companies to establish a new multi-source agreement focused on advancing open, interoperable specifications for expanded beam optical EBO connectivity and AI infrastructure. Expanded beam optical technology is increasingly seen as a critical enabler for AI infrastructure, offering advantages in reliability, ease of maintenance, and performance in high-density environments for hyperscalers. Maybe 3M ends up becoming an optics play based on this new announcement. They're partnering with NVIDIA here. 3M year-to-date is down 11%, market cap of $74 billion. This is definitely an announcement to look at. They're partnering with Meta, Oracle, Cisco, Arista, and AMD to bring optical connectivity to data centers. The fact that these legacy companies are getting into the optics space just shows how much unbelievable demand is forming for optics and photonics, because it seems like that is the next kind of core constraint to allow GPUs to talk to each other. Are they doing glue AI? Yes, they are. They are incorporating AI into their glue. Meta just flipped green. Let's see if we can get 600 again. Corning down 3.4, Elf down 2, Enovix down 1, Applied Digital down 0.5%, Hut 8 Mining down 1.4. You're seeing a lot of rejections across the board. A lot of rejections across the board. Nebius rejected at 185, AMD rejected at 457, Tesla rejected at 447. NVIDIA is the only one that's been really moving. Broadcom, is that down? Broadcom is down. Trying to recover, but still red. QXO, I think, has earnings on Thursday, so we didn't have that yesterday. That stock down 2% as well. Where's BTC? Bitcoin. Wow, UK 30-year yield soars to its highest level in 1998. Dude, the credit markets continue to just be like that overhang where it's like you're trying not to think about it, but then you think about it for a little bit and you're like, oh, this is not good. Like I know this is not good. But you're also like, well, why should I care that much? It's like, I know why I should care that much, but I'm trying not to care that much. This thing got to 4.8 in April last year. And that's when I think Trump, it was like 2 days after that. I remember Trump, that's when Trump was like, all right, 90-day pause on the tariffs. We're not doing it. And the credit markets calmed down. But the market was dumping at the same time. So you had people selling yields or selling bonds and selling stocks back in April 2025. That's why it got like so catastrophic to the point where you needed to do something. This time people are buying stocks and selling bonds, which doesn't necessarily have to result in some type of like ugly results, although it could. Rocket Lab got rejected at 121, right back to 116. A lot of these breakouts today have been really fake outside of NVIDIA, which is continuing to try to hold on a little bit. OpenAI's $20 billion commitment could give it an 11% stake in Cerebras. So this is something that we didn't talk about in the morning. Cerebras sells chips to OpenAI. That's one of their biggest customers. So that is something I think they're floating on the IPO roadshow by saying, look, OpenAI is going to pay us $20 billion. Essentially, we have $20 billion of RPO from OpenAI. OpenAI is obviously a strategic partner as well, which is why they have an equity stake in the company. But Cerebras, as a result, can say, we're doing a couple billion in revenue, but we have this 20 billion coming in. We get another contract with maybe an Anthropic. We'll have 40 billion. Our market cap's 80 billion, 2 times sales. Like, you could kind of justify that rate of growth. Now, granted, they were looking for a $30 billion IPO. Now it's looking like it's going to be a lot more. But that one might be a massive name to pump. Meta right there, 600. Reddit still down 1.75%. ANET getting a bid a little bit. They had a bad earnings, but networking is super important for data centers. The problem with Arista, and not just Arista, but networking itself, is NVIDIA is also doing networking with Spectrum, right? So like, I think the fear, which was the same fear around memory a couple months ago, now that fear has started to become dissipated, but the fear was that NVIDIA's LPU architecture and what they're doing with SRAM could find a way to sidestep the necessity for the amount of high bandwidth memory and DRAM that some of the other memory players are creating if there's just more innovation. That's why that Google headline about compression algorithms on memory really spooked the memory market a month ago. it's become a bit more obvious that whatever innovation the market thinks NVIDIA is going to come up with for memory or hyperscalers are going to come up with isn't happening yet. So, and we're in such high demand and short supply that the memory stocks have so much pricing power. But when it comes to networking, NVIDIA has made a lot of progress to sell their own products as part of the GPU build out for networking, which is why I think there's always that fear on the Ciscos and Aristas of the world that, like, yeah, they have a lot of demand, but at what point does that demand potentially just go to NVIDIA instead at a cheaper price and better margin? Same thing with ALAB, but that stock getting a little bit of a recovery here today. S&P lowest of the day, down about 0.6%. We have not had a 1% day in a while. Where's Walmart? Are we green on Walmart and Costco? We are green on Walmart and Costco, baby. Look at that. Costco above 1,000. It feels like February of 2026. Now we just need Verizon to participate. And we're back to 3 months ago. Back to 3 months ago. GOP State Attorneys General seeks an SEC review of Sam Altman. Dude, Sam Altman, he's getting interrogated and questioned from so many different angles at this point. They have some of the OpenAI hearings on YouTube. There's this channel that's like streaming just the audio of the actual court case. They're like allowed to stream the audio. And I was listening to a little bit yesterday, and I mean, it's just Elon and Greg Brockman and Sam Altman trying to prove their own narrative of what's happening. And Oracle 185. I don't know who's going to win, but if OpenAI loses and they have to pay $134 billion to Elon, I think if that stock was public, it would be down a lot that day. Stat for you guys: the current bull market is now at 1,304 days and needs to continue just 21 more days to eclipse the 1,324 bull rally from June 1962 to February 1966. So if we last another couple weeks, we will have the longest bull market in the history of bull markets right there. 10, 12, 2022 is when we bottomed, and we need to go a couple more weeks to get some more of that momentum. Why is NVIDIA dumping right now? Where is NVIDIA? Are we at 220? Is that the dump from 222? Yeah, 220. I mean, it's kind of hard for NVIDIA to keep spiking if everything's down. Like AAOI, look at this, went from 208 to 190 in seconds. SPY's down more than 0.5%. Like, it's tough for NVIDIA. Qualcomm's down 6, Rocket Lab's down 3. For NVIDIA to be the lone wolf making all-time highs is tough on a day like that. NVIDIA's still down. AppLovin, that was at 490. That's back at 483. It's not just semis today. It's everything, right? Whirlpool's up a little bit. Robinhood Ventures Fund's up a little bit. Micron, okay, here's the challenge. Do we lose 760 right here? It's held 760 basically for the past week, ever since it made this breakout. Tannis is down all the way to 200. Exactly. Apple's up. Corning's down 5. Apple's green. So market's rotating into Apple. ETH is down 3, is it? ETH is down 1.7. BTC is also down. Okay, so all your crypto plays getting hit right here. Netflix is pumping? Huh. All right, market rotating into Netflix, Apple, Costco, and Walmart today. Shopify not even catching bid. Microsoft still down. OSS just lost that 1640. Yeah, this is everything now. Outside of the few names I met, this is everything. Verizon obviously getting a bid. AT&T because they're more value names. Poet somehow still green. There was a news update on Poet. They're introducing a new business officer. The rumor yesterday was Qualcomm's taking a stake in them. That has not been confirmed. But Poet's like bringing... By the way, eBay rejected GameStop's offer this morning as well. But Poet is naming Sandeep Kumar, who was previously the senior vice president of worldwide operations at Silicon Labs, as their chief operating officer. And that's why that one might be green. ASTS down 12%. What do you think about hantavirus? So there's been more cases, a couple in Jersey, a couple in Italy. Obviously a bunch in the regions where the cruise ship was. I mean, there's not a lot of media coverage on it, thinking that it's a massive deal yet, but time will tell if it's. I mean, the core thing I've heard about it is that it's not human to human transmissible. So the extent of it spreading is not as easily possible, but obviously if that happens, that would be not the best thing. Micron getting a little bit of a bid, so it didn't lose 760. There's those green candles up to 770. We're going to see if it gets there. Citrini just bought a new stock, VSH, Vishay Intertech, 4.86 billion. Key player in power components like capacities and in inductors positioned to gain from shortages. How much is this stock up year to date? VSH. Damn, dude. See, even Citrini, which I respect a lot as a research firm, for those that don't know them, they're a very good research firm. Multiple names they've called out have done well over the past 4 years. Now, granted, the pushback is people say they call like 200 names a year. So obviously, if you call 200 names, you're going to get a bunch of names that go up. But the point is, like, I respect their research, I respect their work, but even they are initiating a position today on a stock that's up 125% year to date. Like, it's one of those markets where you just have to accept if you're going to buy a new stock, you're going to have to be okay with buying it having missed the initial rally. And if you're not, you just might be locked out from getting in forever. Unless you get like a real nasty Tom Lee 15-20% dip on the market, then you'll have an entry. And then no one's going to buy it because everyone's going to be happy they didn't buy it in the first place. But the point is, if you want to buy, you have to accept that you missed the initial buy earlier this year. What do you think about MUU? Okay, whoever's buying MUU is totally degenerate, but you have made so much money buying this shit. This is the double leveraged Micron ETF. I mean, this is great. Dude, the double leveraged Micron ETF got to $645 when Micron was at $800. Like, talk about leverage on one of the most volatile assets that's out there, but volatile to the upside. It hasn't gone down basically over the past couple months. eBay has rejected the GameStop proposal. eBay right there, that's flat. GME, that's down 1.3. What if you believe in Micron? So the thing about the leverage ETFs is it's not about believing in a stock. It's about the theta decay and the NAV erosion. So if Micron is flat for the next 2 months, assuming the market just chills out a little bit and it's had this massive run, MUU will go down, right? Because you have NAV erosion. So the levered ETFs, they need something to the upside or the downside, and they give you heightened exposure and leverage, which is where you go long or short. But the worst thing for them is to stay flat, because then, your NAV erodes. Now, granted, if it stays flat for 2 months and then booms up 20%, then maybe that's okay. But if it doesn't have the types of swings that it has, the levered ETFs don't really do the job that they're intended to do. Qualcomm down 7 today. Mamba says, I bought some Micron. I bought some with MU at 410. I just sold it. I spoke to a friend yesterday who has a very heavy options position in Micron. He's up like $1 million. It's funny because he was down like 300,000 in March, and he called me. He was freaking out. But he's doing pretty well now, and he's been trimming about 10% every day. So he's still super bullish on it, but at the end of the day, he basically took 300 grand and turned it into like 1.1 million on these Micron calls. They're in their leaps too. And so now every day he's like selling another 100,000 and kind of getting out of it. Still super bullish on it. He's just like, it's like a 5x in 2 months at this point. Qualcomm down 7, Rocket Lab down 0.5% as well. He could have did that with just the stock. Well, that's the crazy part. Obviously, the options have gone so crazy. But the stock itself is also, the stock has doubled basically since March, a little bit more than doubled. He's basically 5x'd because of that double. But, Is this thing going to 1,000? We got to upgrade it again to 1,000 yesterday. So you've got more and more of the market thinking that there is a shot to get there. BSOP says I use TSLL as covered calls and cash spread puts as a way of not touching my Tesla position. Yeah, and that's kind of what they're intended to do, right? They're intended to be vehicles to trade that give you heightened exposure and leverage, which means there's more risk versus touching the actual core position that you might have on a stock as well. Apple 293. As that continues to go green. I just sold 60 shares of Micron. Hims is recovering well. Hims is, 24 to 26, still down 8%, but at least it's not down 16%. Novo Nordisk says high dose Wegovy helped some patients lose nearly 28% of their weight. Novo's up 1%. Okay. Is COPEX going green? COPEX is up a little bit. Copper has hit an all-time high. You're not seeing COPEX, which are copper miners, hit an all-time high. What about Freeport, FCX? That one's still red on the day. You are seeing copper get a little bit more excitement. Corning again down 4, Elf down 1, Keel down 7. This thing completely reversed. Marathon down 5, CleanSpark down 6. Didn't have a good earnings yesterday. Bloom Energy, that's back down to 280. Microsoft 408. Shopify down 0.5% right here. All right, let's see what other macro news we got. Let's see what else. So price action relatively red across the board. A couple stocks trying to break out, but not really getting a meaningful breakout. Talked about Noto buying some SoFi yesterday. Oh, GameStop filed a proxy statement to allow an increase of their share authorization to like 2.5 billion shares. So they are getting ready to dilute heavily again. Kathy's selling a lot of AMD. She sold a ton of AMD yesterday, and she bought Circle and Kratos. She also sold a ton of Rocket Lab. So she's been selling AMD for the past couple of weeks. She started selling Rocket Lab yesterday. She's buying a few more things. This was Lutnick with Tim Cook yesterday talking about semiconductor manufacturing.
You know, the people building in America are serious.
Yeah.
We're gonna get semiconductors back.
Oh, yeah.
And we got to work together to bring them back, because you guys are the greatest, consumer product in the world.
We purchased 20 billion semiconductors last year in America.
I just want to tell you that America is the greatest place on earth.
Okay, so that was Tim Cook and Lutnick going at it. I mean, look, you got to give Tim Cook credit, right? He knows how to play politics and be friendly with everybody. Apple 294 as she keeps going. You got to give it to the White House as well. They know how to freaking market, man. Like in the age of AI, they understand. I mean, sometimes it's cringe, 100%, but they can get attention with their videos right here. Yeah, Tim Cook getting ready to retire as well. As you're seeing, this will be his last trip, I guess, with the White House to China. Mamba, thanks for the super chat. Amit, need your take on how Elon could potentially impact data center plays given XAI has now entered with Anthropic deals. This bearish Nebius. So I've thought about this over the past couple of days. My reaction, based on the core premise of the deal, is that it's not bearish any of the data center plays if you believe we're compute constrained. So if we are compute constrained, Anthropic, which is telling us we need unlimited amounts of compute, I don't know if they're going to sign a deal with Nebius, but the point is they're going to continue acquiring more compute. Now, I think the reason they went with Elon over a Nebius or a Iren or anything like that is because it's freaking Elon and he already has Colossus set up. So to me, it was very obvious if you're Dario, do I give a contract to a NeoCloud that has to set everything up, or do I just go to Elon, which it's already set up, they already built the data center, it's already online, 200,000 20 GPUs is already right there. I could just plug into it and then boom, I'm good to go. I'm online in what could be, less than a few months. So I think if we're compute constrained, Nebius, Iran, Corey, all these companies should continue to get more bids. The argument that people have made is, oh, well, if SpaceX brings data centers into orbit, then all of the companies doing it on Earth are going to not catch a bid because there's unlimited amounts of data center capacity in space, where there's obviously lots of bandwidth constraints in terms of power and land, and then obviously compute on Earth. So that's bearish. I would push back and say, I don't think Elon's bringing data centers into space anytime soon in a meaningful way. Like, I just don't think I think that's a dream right now. Eventually, maybe, but not in the time that it's needed for Anthropic to get more GPUs to power Claude Code. So, yeah, I don't think it's bearish. I think it's just more and more of the TAM for compute continuing to grow. Palantir right there down about 1%. eToro down 6% today. AMD now going down 1.3%. That's what we thought about Starlink. Yeah, but Starlink took time. Starlink didn't just pop up in a year and scaled. And also, there's a fundamental difference between Starlink having satellites in space bringing broadband connectivity, which is a hard thing to do, don't get me wrong, and trying to figure out how to do cooling in space or temperature management in space. I mean, there's entire companies like Vertiv that are dedicated to cooling inside of data centers. Like, when Jensen talked about data centers in space, his entire point was, like, it's not that easy to do. Otherwise, we would be doing it. They have one GPU in space that they're experimenting with to try to figure out how to build data centers in space, but it's not that practical yet. So I think Elon's doing his job. He's selling the story of it for the IPO. I also think the Anthropic thing is a great story for the SpaceX IPO because now they've become a neocloud. I think that the math I did on it was they're going to get $5 billion of revenue essentially from Anthropic based on doing that. Which, even if it's not profitable revenue, at least it is more growth than what they're showing right now. Nebius down 2%. You don't need to do cooling in space. That's the point, 100%. But that's also the obstacle. It's like, okay, you don't need to do cooling, but you still need to manage the data center at scale. And you might have intense levels of cooling in space, which means you need to manage the heating of it, right? Like, it can't get super cold, can't get super hot. So there's that clip where Jensen talked about it with Lex. He was just like, this is a really hard thing to do. He even joked about it. He was like, if I knew Elon would get this much praise for doing it, I would have told you guys 5 years ago that I was trying to do it. And I just think it's a little bit more complicated than what we all think. Yeah, managing the radiation. I mean, there's so many more obstacles to making that actually become real. But Elon said it's not a big deal. Yeah, because Elon's trying to sell the IPO. Like, he's got to sell people got to buy this stock. It's $2 trillion. He's got to get people excited about it. That's what you do as a CEO. But I don't think we can take him at his word that data centers in space will be up by tomorrow. Like, it just doesn't seem practical. SoFi is still down 1% right here. Oscar 22, look at that. That's breaking out 2% up as that screen. Shopify building in Antarctica. Yeah, you might have to do that. Shopify 102.96. Austin says, I'm selling some Google to buy more Palantir and Meta. Wow. Okay. I don't necessarily hate that. I think Meta is stupid cheap compared to Google. I think Palantir obviously is being discounted completely from its results. And, if you bought Google in the 150s, a little bit of rotation from the gains is not that crazy. Got to see if Tanner buys Palantir. He's been looking at it seriously. We've been talking more about it. He's trying. Elon also said he's too early with big ideas, and I'm his biggest fan as well. Yeah, look, I'm a big Elon fan as well, but it's okay to say the guy is super ambitious and it takes longer to execute on his goals. Like, that's not discounting his ambition. In fact, that's something that we need, more and more people that are ambitious. But the practical reality is some of this stuff is just takes longer than expected. Now, if Elon's broader vision is right, that we need as much compute as possible, then once again, that's what continues to justify this bull market. Is just like, whether it's Elon himself spending all the CapEx or all the other companies coming in to spend the CapEx will be spent. I'm worried about the day the CapEx starts to slow down. That's the scariest part of everything that's happening right now. Like, if we get to a point where the markets fundamentally say the CapEx is slowing down, where do we go from there? This is a clip of Elon talking about the compute constraints, particularly around power, and essentially why chip production is having the bull market that we're seeing right now.
Those who have lived in software land don't realize that they're about to have a hard lesson in hardware. It's actually very difficult to build power plants, and then you don't just need you need power plants. You need all of the electrical equipment. You need the electrical transformers to run the transformers, the AI transformers. Now, the utility industry is a very slow industry. They pretty much they impedance match to the government, to the Public Utility Commission. So they're they impedance match literally and figuratively. So they're very slow because their past has been very slow. So trying to get them to move fast is just if you try to do an interconnect agreement have you ever tried to do an interconnect agreement with a utility at scale, with a lot of power?
As a professional podcaster, I can say that I'm not, in fact.
Yeah.
They have to need many more views before that becomes an issue.
They have to do a study for a year. Okay. A year later, they'll come back to you with their interconnect study.
Can't you solve this with your own behind the meter power stuff?
You can build power plants.
Yeah.
That's what we did at XAI for Colossus 2. So for Colossus 2.
But so yeah, why are we talking about the grid? Why not just build GPUs and power co-locators?
That's what we did.
Right. But I'm saying, why isn't this a generalized solution when you're talking about all the issues?
Where do you get the power plants from?
I'm saying when you talk about all the issues working with utilities, you can just build private power plants with the data centers.
Right. But it begs the question of where do you get the power plants? Where do you get the power plants from? I mean, the power plant makers.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like this is the gas turbine backlog, basically.
Yes. You can drill down to a level further. It's the vanes and blades in the turbines.
I want to highlight what he's saying right here. This is what we've been talking about, and this is how the market has rotated. Not only are the turbines, GE Veranova, that's why that stock has done so well, in demand, Elon is saying the nuts and the bolts, the blades of the turbine are in demand. And that's where the money is going in this stock market, to the company that makes the blades for the turbines for GE Veranova. I don't know what stock that is, but if I looked at it, it's probably up 50% this year. I mean, that's what's happening in this market right now. And that means the money's leaving ServiceNow and Adobe for those smaller companies.
You can drill down to a level further. It's the vanes and blades in the turbines that are the limiting factor, because the casting it's like a very specialized process to cast the blades and vanes in the turbines, assuming using gas power, and it's very difficult to scale other forms of power. You can scale potentially solar, but the tariffs currently for importing solar in the US are gigantic, and the domestic solar production is pitiful.
So that is why I think your metas are down this year, because the market cares about the companies that make the blades. DFIA right here commented, Howmet makes blades for electrical turbines. I just took a job there. I just looked at the stock, up 30% this year. I mean, it's thank you for that comment, because it kind of proves the point, right? Like, the company that makes the blades for the electrical turbines, which are necessary for the power plants, which are necessary for the data centers, that stock, and this is a relatively large company, 100 billion, but the point is that stock is up 30% this year. It's not a super small company, but it's up this year. It's outperforming Meta. It's outperforming Microsoft. Even though Microsoft and Meta, I would argue, probably have a lot better margins and probably a lot better net income profiles than Howmet Aerospace. And I guess that's just the nature of this market that we all have to adapt to. And so the scariest part of this is, when does that break? When do we wake up one day and the market's like, we don't give a crap about the blades inside of the turbines. We want 80% gross margins, and we want to go back to, buying the stuff that has worked for 10 years. And I wonder if we are a long time away from that shift coming back. Like, I really want, if this compute build out is as serious as the market is implying that it is, if Anthropic keeps growing another 20 billion every other month in revenue, and they're going to need a lot more turbines indirectly, because they need a lot more data centers, which means they need a lot more power plants, which means they do not need a lot more nuts and bolts and picks and shovels to build all that. And that's where Elon, I think, has a massive competitive advantage, because, he started off that clip by saying, if you are in software land, you're going to get a rude awakening. Elon's been in hardware land and software land, but obviously because of FSD, but He knows hardware very well. He is an engineer by nature. And he is, I think, the best suited to build one of the biggest AI companies in the world because it takes a lot of manufacturing and a lot of compute. Now, he doesn't have the best model because Grok didn't end up winning from that perspective, but still, I think that is his advantage. Micron still hasn't lost 760. She tried to rebound to 778, and now she's barely holding above 760 right here. But she's trying out. How Met 5 years up 752%. Wow. What is Meta's 5 year? Meta's 5 year still has to be pretty good, right? Meta's 5 year is 90%. Oh my goodness, dude. Meta sucks, bro. Meta sucks. Look at that. How Met 718%. Meta 90%. Now, obviously, if you go from the lows of 2022, it's a lot better, but still. Amazon's 5 year, I'm scared to look at. Amazon's 5 year, 64%. They're all underperforming the NASDAQ. What about Tesla's 5 year? That still includes 2021, right? Yeah, because it includes 2021, Tesla gets 122% over the past 5 years. But if you bought at the top in 2021, obviously it's not been the best. What's Microsoft's? Microsoft's is 65%, same as Amazon. Nvidia is like 1,000% or something, right? Nvidia is 1,400%. And then Apple, I still think is pretty heavy. Apple also outperforming Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon, 131%. And then the Googs, the lag 7, yeah, that's what they are. Google doing the best. Greatest company on the planet, man. 232% past 5 years. As Sundar still continues to gain more excitement. Tomorrow we have PPI. That's going to be bad. Yeah, CPI is bad. PPI is bad. But again, markets aren't down that much today. Oh, we lost 760 on Micron. Okay. But again, S&P is the worst it's been in like a week. But in terms of bad, what we have to deal with in March and April, it's like nothing. S&P is down less than 0.5% right here. So $5, not that crazy. Micron, though, that is losing some steam. Let's see if that dip gets bought up at 750. IBM, that's also down 1% on the day. What do you think of Grab, SoFi, Hood? Are these still buys? HIMS? Steve and I, we talked about this on Basis Points last week. And by the way, thank you for everyone who's been supporting that show. We're both really enjoying it. And last week was our highest viewed episode ever. I think it's because Steve wore my fit and I wore Steve's fit. And maybe people loved it because of that. But I'll link it right here for those that didn't see it. But deeply, deeply appreciate people that are enjoying that podcast. We talked about it last week. I just think the names that are not rooted in the AI thematics are dead. And I think if you're buying those names, which if you have a full position in, I really don't think you need higher allocation in. Like if you have a full position in Meta, I mean, unless you love Meta, yeah, you can buy the dip and just hold on. But obviously there's a lot of short-term alpha that's way better than Meta, like the blades inside of a turbine. That's where the market is going to. If you're calling BS on the blades inside of a turbine being as relevant as it needs to be, then you buy the names that are beaten up because this is the time to buy them. But I think buying them and expecting alpha, the market has just shifted. Like it's obvious the market has shifted and they do not care anymore about companies that don't have to do with the CapEx cycle. It's a weird shift because you would think that those companies are benefiting from the CapEx cycle, like a Microsoft and Meta, like a Hood to an extent when it comes to their AI, but that's not happening. SK Hynix is a $900 billion company. I mean, though the one thing I struggle with when I think about these names is can they sustain multi-trillion-dollar valuations? Like the only reason we give NVIDIA, TSM, Microsoft, Meta multi-trillion-dollar valuations is because we think they're sustainable. Like there's obviously way more volatility in them than a Coca-Cola or a Costco, but there's way more alpha in growth and they're putting up those higher growth rates and they're expected to grow to become 10, 20, $30 trillion companies. If you buy Micron at $1 trillion, you're not buying it for it to go to 1.2 trillion. I mean, maybe you are as a trade, but as a long-term investment, you're expecting it to be worth a lot more. And I guess the question is for a lot of these, forget Micron, just these CapEx plays, can Arista, which is at $177 billion, become a $600-700 billion company over the coming years with the data center build out? And that's where the business models might have to diversify a little bit more than just benefiting from the capex, which is what Nebius is really trying to do. I mean, Nebius, every time you listen to the founders of Nebius talk about it, they scoff at the idea that the reason their stock is going up or the reason their company is growing is because they're getting these data center deals. Like they want to become the next hyperscaler versus be the entity that, you know, connects hyperscalers with compute. And so they have that like 20-year vision. The question is, do those other companies have that as well? Did NVIDIA just go red? NVIDIA very close to going red. Very close to going red. Intel, are we red today? Intel is indeed red, 5% down. Boys, this may come as a surprise, but SoFi is down. Dude, I think Nodo is obviously trying to pump it at this point. I mean, buying 250,000 shares every other day is obviously trying to tell people, hey, I think we're cheap. And if the bet NVIDIA just went red, if my CEO of a stock that I'm heavily into is buying stock as his way of pumping it, that's the best way he could be pumping it. Forget the tweets, forget going on Bloomberg, like just buy the stock. It's just, it's not working. It's just not freaking working right now, which is the issue. CNN says a final decision on how to proceed with the Iran war is unlikely before Trump's visit to China. All right, so I guess they're going to go to... it feels like they're going to China not to talk about geopolitics, but they're going to China to talk about freaking business, because he's bringing all these business... Like, when's the last time a president brought all these business executives with him to China? It feels like that's what's... happening here in regards to the amount of China or the amount of executives coming into China. Someone just bought $3 million of calls on Wolf speed 49.82. That one is red. McDonald's is up, Coca-Cola is up, and Walmart is up. Back to value, baby. Shaggy, thank you for the super chat. Amit, thank you for all you do, and keep ringing the bell long and loud. I want to buy Rock Lab. What would be a good dip price entry? Okay, put in the chat. What do people think? I am not buying Rock Lab at these levels. Bought enough, 67 to 74 in March. It's hard, right? Because if this falls 17%, it goes to 100. And that's your dip. But is 100 really a dip? I mean, technically 17% is a dip, right? Like, in what world is 17% not a dip? But $100 is still pretty aggressive, right? So, but then again, if you're waiting for 80, like, I don't know if it's reversing a 40% move. So this is where selling puts, I think, is important. You know, sell puts at 105 maybe, or at 100. And you have to be willing to own those shares at 100 and 105. Now, when it gets there, I think a lot of people... You know, Rock Lab's volatile. We forget that these high beta growth names can go down as quick as they go up. I think there's good reason why it's going up. But if it comes back down, no one will be surprised that a name that went up 50% lost 20%. Now it's only up 30%. Okay, boo-hoo. But, you know, like, you can't be that upset about it. So you either have to wait for a drop, DCA, which is the boring answer, but it probably is, you know, the answer. Or you sell puts at a much lower level, and then you don't cry when you get a sign on those puts. And you take ownership of the shares that way. But, you know, Rocket Lab is prone to 30, 40% drawdowns. I mean, we've seen them multiple times over the past couple of years. It's just this breakout was pretty aggressive. Wow, Micron loses 750. All right, who's buying the dip? Who's buying the dip? Is it time? Is this our freaking opportunity? See, this is the thing. When these stocks go down, no one wants to buy it. But watch this thing go back up to 780, and everyone's like, man, I could have been in this. I don't know, man. I mean, what do you think about Chris's new play on Build-A-Bear? So I know he pitched this stock last night to Steve. I didn't get to watch the episode. So I don't understand the thesis, but this stock actually did really well back in 2022. It had a big run. So it has growth in it. Now, I know people laugh because it's like Build-A-Bear. Why would people be excited about it? But yes, it is 20% short. There is a 3% divvy, and there's only 12 million shares. Could it squeeze? Yeah. It's just, once again, it's not in the right thematic for the markets, I think, to be super excited about. So I don't know if it gets the benefit of that squeeze. But we have to see. Also, I don't even know if he bought it yet. I know he pitched it, but I don't know if he actually bought Build-A-Bear. Intel, 7% down as that's going red. NVIDIA also just went red. Intel potentially losing 120. The best part on basis points was when Amit messed up on SanDisk. Freud would be laughing at that clip as well. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can just go to like 28 minutes on the latest basis points and listen to what happened. Dude, even our engineer who does the audio and video, he started laughing. As soon as I said it, he started laughing. So it's like, man, maybe the rumors are true. So it was pretty funny. Broadcom, that's down. Apple, AppLovin, Costco, and Arista are up. Everything else, SoFi down. NVIDIA loses 220. Intel loses 120. Micron, do we lose 740 on Micron? Do we lose 740? I feel like this is going to get bought, dude. Maybe it's a little bit of an ugly day, but I don't know. I mean, the market cap on this just moves so aggressively back and forth. And you did have Co2 come out with that big video yesterday saying memory is the new bottleneck. They think it's going to 5x demand over the next couple of years. Here's the question for everybody. We've got to see when the 13Fs come out, who the hell is buying Micron? What super investors are buying it? This is going to be Q1, right? Okay, so it's going to be basically we had a really big opportunity across the market in March. Q1 ends March 30th. So we are going to see which big guys took advantage of buying these names that got super sold off. And I wonder if any of them did. And if they didn't, has this rally all been retail? Now, it's hard to imagine it's literally all been retail because the level of move feels more institutional. But if you have none of the big, the Bridgewaters of the world, I don't think your Buffett's going to buy it, but still the Berkshire Hathaways, Brad Gerstner, I mean, he's interviewing the Micron CEO soon. I wonder if he ended up taking a big position. Like, I'm curious, the Druckenmillers, like, did people really buy the dip on memory? Or are they chasing it in Q2? And maybe it's so exacerbated because the institutions are chasing it in Q2 and retail bought it in Q1. And then we won't find out for another couple months if institutions are selling it here. Navia's down 5. But we've got to see. I wonder if the Samsung strike will amount to anything. The Samsung strike is like an issue. I don't know if that's the reason for why Korea's index fell yesterday. I mean, it could be part of the reason. Unions are threatening to walk out of pay talks. Samsung's offering, a decent share in the operating profit, but the unions want more. And quite frankly, if memory is this hot of a commodity, the unions have a lot of bargaining power here. But I feel like that'll be resolved. I don't think that's a long-term reason why, the memory names get hit. Do you think Berkshire will buy Microsoft? No. I don't think Berkshire, like you heard Buffett on that interview last Sunday, and Greg Abel is probably agreeing with Buffett here, right? Buffett wouldn't say what he said if he thought Greg Abel was going to do the opposite. They don't want to spend money here. And Buffett was very clear that he says this is not an opportunity. There's nothing in the market that's exciting enough to deploy capital. And he said that. He said the exact same thing when we were down 8% in March. Remember, he had that quote. He was like, this is a dip for ants or something. So I don't think Berkshire is going to do anything. I think they're waiting for a real crash. I don't know if we get that. Maybe they double down on some of their core positions, but in terms of buying new stuff, I don't know if they get there. Here was Jamie Dimon speaking this morning about the markets.
How do you think of oil Apple? And how do you think about what's happening in the Middle East? If this lasts 3 weeks, 4 weeks, even like 2 months, are we going to be in trouble?
It's a big deal, and every day it gets a little bit worse. I don't know how it's going to be resolved. I hope it gets resolved in the interest of the United States and against the Iranian regime, not the Iranian people. But I don't know. But I read something today that was very interesting, that China reduced their demand by 5 million barrels a day. America increases exports by 3 million barrels a day. That 8 million is made up for a lot of what was lost, and which is maybe why it hasn't been as severe as people think. On the other hand, inventories are coming down. Gas wells may have to be closed and stuff like that. So it gets a little more serious every day. That day that it becomes a disaster has been pushed out quite further than we thought at the beginning.
I mean, he is right. The day where the market would think this is a big deal has been pushed out heavily as the bulls continue to be in control. Let's hear from Gil Lauria as well on some of this big tech stuff and what's happening with China.
For Apple, and Apple has been incredibly resilient in this market. Apple still gets substantial amount of its revenue, more than 15% from China. It still owns the high-end market within China, and a lot of the credit goes to CEO Tim Cook, who is stepping down, but will retain policy-making responsibilities as chairman of the board. And this is a big reason. He has had so much success navigating the US-China conflict and maintaining Apple's presence in China.
We got a antivirus update. Let's pull this up real quick.
There are steps being taken to try to contain this virus.
At the moment, there is no sign that we are seeing the start of a larger outbreak. But of course, the situation could change. And given the long incubation period of the virus, it's possible we might see more cases in the coming weeks.
Here at home, 18 passengers have returned to the U.S. 1 tested positive, 1 showing symptoms in Georgia, and 16 passengers are currently isolating in Nebraska.
Okay, we're going to have to keep an eye on that. You know, the crazy story about the coronavirus from Chris Camillo, and I'm sure some people have probably heard of this before, is he was keeping track of COVID in December of 2019. And he was buying puts on the market every single week, like weekly puts on the market, because he thought COVID would crash the market. And he was doing this for 4 months. He was down, the way he describes the story is he was down to literally like his last few dollars, because he was putting like hundreds of thousands of dollars into these puts every single week, thinking eventually the market would crash. March 13th, that day when Trump went on from the Oval Office and said, like, my fellow Americans, you know, this is going to be an issue. That was like the last week that Camillo had bought those puts, and his money like 20x'd that week because the market crashed the next 2 days, right? I think we had like a 15% drawdown in 2 days, and boom, he made all his money. And then he took that money and flipped long in April and rode the COVID inflation boom all the way up. So I wonder how many people are potentially really looking at hantavirus and saying, is this something that the market could be thrown off guard by, and buying protection every week just in case it spikes up? Now, again, it feels like this is different than COVID, but then again, I'm not an expert on diseases, so I have no idea. And, you know, if there are certain market participants that are playing this out in case it ends up being a deeper story. Meta right there, 602. It's not as easily transmittable as COVID. Yes, that is correct. I really haven't researched it, to be honest. I'm like, I've been spending a lot more time trying to understand what's going on with semiconductors and still keeping up with the Iran war. So I haven't really spent some time to sit down and look at it. But I would hope it doesn't become as aggressive. 602 right there on Meta, as that is green. Are we reversing? Why is BuzzFeed up 99%? There was a headline on BuzzFeed that I'm forgetting about right now. This is also a $54 million company, so obviously it can move pretty aggressively. Let me see. What is the headline here? BuzzFeed. Oh, yeah, we talked about this. BuzzFeed announced Byron Allen's family office will invest $120 million for a $52 million stake. Byron Allen is becoming the CEO and the new chairman. Yeah, there you go. That's great. Okay, where's Mike Ron? 752. All right, 746. Maybe that was the dip. Maybe that was the dip. Maybe. Berkshire, 48,273. Rock Lab also flipping it. You know, the other thing I've been studying a lot more about and like watching some more documentaries and just reading up more stuff about the dot-com bubble. I like, obviously I wasn't really investing at 4 years old. So I'm going back and like watching some of the news clips and just how, you know, the dot-com bubble ended up playing out, and how, you know, there were 497 IPOs in the year 2000. I mean, could you imagine? That's like 10 IPOs a week. You know, and I'm comparing it to now, and I'm like, we're all looking forward to like 3 big IPOs, which are going to be the biggest IPOs in history, but it's not just some random companies attaching .ai going public like it was back in the dot-com bubble. So it's like the nonsense we saw happen with birds a couple weeks ago, old birds. That was happening like every day in the dot-com bubble, based on what I've been reading, which feels less euphoric, or feels way more euphoric than what we're having today. Glass half full says, let's do a poll. Is this the 10 to 20% move down, or do we continue lower this month? Okay, so let's do the poll. You're basically asking, I guess I'll frame the question as, let's frame it like this. Oh, Ron Barron was on today. We got to listen to Ron Barron. 59% of you guys said red. We'll frame the question like this. Do you see a 10% drawdown coming over the next 2 months? So that's June and July. By the end of July, do you see, let's do end of August. We'll do 3 months. By the end of the summer, do you think a 10% drawdown is coming? Okay. Barron's obviously here to pump SpaceX. He's invested in it a long time ago. A fun fact about Ron Barron, he is the only fund manager to beat the QQQs over the past 10 years because he did the one thing that people hate to do. He bought and held. Tesla and SpaceX created the majority of those gains because he just bought and held. And that's why he's literally the only fund manager to beat the QQQs over the past 15 years.
And now I think in the case of Tesla, which we've been investing in, met him in 2010 in an IPO. It took me 4 years to become convinced that he was going to be successful. I thought he was brilliant, kept talking to him, kept visiting him. 2014, go to visit him again and said, man, I have to invest in this now. Now is the time. Stock triples from 25 to 75. I don't own a share. It doubles again. The pain is too great. and then we invest $400 million between 2014 and 16 and make about $8 billion so far in profit. And I think we can make 5 times that amount in 10 years. And then SpaceX, starting in 2017, because I have this relationship with him, it's very good. And I learn about SpaceX and I'm interested in it. I say, I'd like to invest in that. And they do these tenders twice a year in SpaceX because every single employee is a shareholder in SpaceX. They say, Becky, you are this fantastic engineer. You're making $250,000 a year, but you're now worth $5 million. Don't you think it'd be a smart thing to sell some of that stock a little bit to put the money in the bank and protect your family? So they have these tenders twice a year for $1 billion a piece. And we've been one of the largest, if not the largest purchaser in each of these deals. And recently, and they get oversubscribed without any announcements and no bankers, been oversubscribed in one afternoon. And so we're treated just like one of the largest institutions in each one of these offerings.
Basically, you are paying the employees so that they can become more liquid and hold on to those things. And that's how you've gotten your ownership stake
exactly.
in this private company to this
so we've
point.
Invested
Which, by the way, that's part of the reason that this company has been able to remain private for so long.
Yeah, right. And so we've invested about $1.7 billion since 2017. And that's now worth about $15 billion at current market prices. So of the 61 billion profits, 20 billion has come from him.
You have been somebody who has been an apostle, kind of speaking about this for years. I can remember having a conversation with you probably back 2020, 2021. You tried to convince me to do it. We're not allowed to invest, and I had to tell you that. But you were saying SpaceX is where it's going to be. This is the investment you really should get into. Had to say no the whole way through. You're now looking at this company about to go public. And what do you think the opportunity is here? What do you think happens?
This is going to become the largest company on the planet. This is so when you go public, I don't know if it's going public at $1.5 trillion or $1.75 trillion or maybe a little bit more. But where it goes public, I think that the company over the next 10 or 15 years is going to be worth 10 trillion, 20 trillion, 30 trillion. And I could be very low on where it's going to be. So, so today we can talk
about a pump. He might end up being right, but obviously he's got a lot of money riding on this. And, you know, he sees the potential. Now, then again, SpaceX probably combined with Tesla has the most potential out there. But 20, 30 trillion, if you're buying it at 2 trillion, that's the opportunity for the IPO.
a little bit about infrastructure.
Why? Yeah, let's talk about why, because
So
I
there's
think
several-
like 70 billion of that would be what the public can actually buy into, I think. of
70
that
billion is
valuation.
exactly right. In fact, right after the offering, then they've changed the rules so that 5 days after the IPO is completed, there will be one index in which it will be included. 10 days, there will be another index in which it's included. 15 days, there will be another index in which it's included.
You're talking about the NASDAQ index?
The president of the New York Stock Exchange came, when I was young, I drove an ice cream truck one summer, and maybe a summer and a half. And one of the things that was important to me was I had to get my Carnival Bar ice cream truck to the beach route before Mr. Softy got there. And so you have, so one of the guys in my office said, and the New York Stock Exchange president wanted to come over and talk to me for some advice. And my friend says, Pat Padalino is our chief operating officer, said, do you ever think when you're driving that ice cream truck that the president of the New York Stock Exchange is going to come talk to you for advice? Are you serious? And I said, well, I was able to beat Mr. Softy to where he was going. And so the way,
he came to ask you for advice about whether they should put that into the index early?
well, she was telling me about the different indexes, but she was also hoping that they would list on the New York Stock Exchange, and they chose the
NASDAQ.
I think they've chosen NASDAQ, which is where all the technology companies are. And she was saying that, there are all these other things that she could.
All right. So SpaceX will be fast-tracked into the indices, and obviously that will be very good for, creating exit liquidity. And then the question is just going to be, are there enough buyers for the shares that are out there? This is going to be one of the most interesting IPOs ever. 2 trillion. Do they have the demand? Answer is probably yes. Do they have the liquidity? Answer is probably yes. Does SpaceX have the sustainability to continue gaining a $2 trillion or continue holding a $2 trillion valuation over the course of the coming years? Forget expanding the valuation. Can it hold $2 trillion as a public company? As a private company, it's really easy to hold a valuation. As a public company, your stock goes up and down every day. I think that's going to be the biggest thing that the market's going to want to see. And how many people buy the dip at 1.5 trillion if it ends up dipping there? If it goes to 3 trillion, how many people buy the dip when it goes back to 2 trillion if it falls back down that far? So this really will be an incredible IPO to witness. Intel down 8, SoFi down 16, Micron still holding 750, not giving it up. Fluence down 15. That's down ugly. The robot ETF thing is down 14%. I don't know why. It's not like Figure and Eptronics valuation changed that quickly. This is what I mean. Some of these things, got to be a little careful, fully understanding exactly what they're doing. Oklo's down 7. Oscar's up on the day. Playboy's down 12. They had some horrible earnings yesterday as well. Appcelera's down 11. I thought they had good earnings, but the street didn't care. Power 6 Solutions, power play for data centers. This thing is down 35%. They did not have the best earnings either. By the way, this was Chris Camillo telling that story about COVID.
Says a lot of your stuff sounds like it might be short term because it's not holding for long
almost exclusively
And then
Darn right.
you're reinvesting that into your addiction in startups, and so there's a lot of it's going that way.
But percentage wise, when you have a high, what I call just a high conviction idea, I'm usually investing between 5 and 10% of my entire liquid portfolio into that idea via options. So if you're wrong, you just lose 5 to 10% of the portfolio. And in a good example of where I did that and was, wrong, like I think 2 or 3, maybe 3 weeks in a row, maybe 4 weeks in a row, and I lost like 30-40% of my portfolio, was during COVID, during the pandemic, when I was kind of tracking the virus coming out of China. I was using Google Translate on a lot of medical reports coming out of China to assess how big of a deal that virus was. And it became very clear to me that it was going to be a global pandemic. And, global pandemics only do one thing to financial markets, right? So I was essentially taking, I think, 10% of my portfolio and putting it into puts in the S&P casino stocks, Vegas casino stocks, and airlines every week, and the market wasn't moving down. Like the market just wasn't accepting COVID for what it was. And I got to a point where I was like 30 to 40% of my portfolio was gone. And I did it again the week after, and that week after was the first week the market cracked and it went down 2%. And then the next week is where it really hit. And that was when.
That's crazy, right? 40% of the portfolio gone. And, Camillo's probably playing with tens of millions of dollars here. And then it finally hits. But that was the risk that he was taking at the time. Rocklab 117, Micron 756. Maybe she's coming back up, but we are starting to see a lot uglier red candles. S&P is the lowest of the day, 734. So 740 was yesterday, 734 today. I wonder how much this is even going to last. So we got some clips right here on the ambassador to China explaining why all these business people are going to this event.
Time you've got all these tech CEOs and the CEO from Boeing and a long list. There are 16 now who will be here. What does that say to China?
Well, it says we're united. I mean, it says that the business community is behind President Trump. These people want a level playing field. They're here to echo what President Trump is talking about. And we welcome them, and I think the Chinese do as well.
Well, Taiwan be an issue in the following sense. There's a bill out there that should provide $14 billion in military assistance to Taipei. And just an hour ago, the president of Taiwan thanked the U.S. for its support. How much does that irk President Xi?
Well, at this point, President Trump is doing exactly what every president's done since 1979. And what we're expecting, unlike Busan, where Taiwan did not come up, we're fully expecting Taiwan will come up as an issue. We will hear the Chinese out. But I don't anticipate President Trump making any major changes in our policy on Taiwan.
Busan.
A lot of stuff they're going to have to navigate. Taiwan, chips, Iran, oil. And, I guess over the coming days, we'll get the updates on exactly how these meetings are going. Shopify potentially going below 100. Yeah, I mean, theoretically, it could be the most consequential meeting in U.S.-China history, especially given the geopolitical issues that both countries are struggling with right now. Wow, ASTS 13% down. I guess Netflix is getting the rotation, folks. There's no headline on Netflix. In fact, didn't Netflix get sued yesterday? Like, you had some bad news, but I think if the semis are selling off. Yeah, the Texas Attorney General sued Netflix for spying on kids and consumers by illegally collecting their data. I think that Netflix and the Netflix shareholders have a pretty simple response to collecting consumer data.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you.
We don't care.
I mean, are you serious? Every tech company collects consumer data. What are we talking about? What is this? What is that? You got to sue Google then. Sue Meta. Like, what? Collecting user data? I mean, that's literally every tech company on the planet. Yeah, of course the stock is up on this nonsense. Netflix has built a surveillance program designed to illegally collect and profit Texans' personal data without their consent. It's not just Texas. It's everyone who uses that platform, all 300 million subscribers. And Facebook does it to 3.8 billion people. I mean, what is this, dude? Sometimes these attorney generals just try to go after the big guys and try to get some brownie points. That's what the Florida guy did to Robinhood back in May of 2024. And it didn't really work. Netflix 8837 right there. Yeah, what about YouTube then? I mean, I'm not saying data security and privacy shouldn't be important, but it's just it's hypocritical to be like Netflix is the one that's doing it. It's like all of them are doing it. But, you know, if you're going to single out Netflix, then there might be a more deeper reason for why. By the way, someone just spent 17.6 million in QQQ puts, 685 strike. Looks like an obvious hedge, especially if you're, you know, going massively long. But almost 20 million is a decent chunk of put premium. EWI is probably down because of SK Hynix. Yeah, that's down 7% for South Korea. Any thoughts on LeBron potentially retiring? I watched the game last night. I don't think he's going to retire. I think he's going to have one more year. I don't know where it's going to be. I actually don't think it's going to be the Lakers. I think he's going to go back to Cleveland and, you know, do one more final year. I think if he comes to New York and gives New York a championship, that would be amazing. But I definitely don't think that was the last we saw of LeBron last night. I don't think he wants to go out like that. But I don't know, dude. I just haven't been a fan of LeBron going to the Lakers. I think it was not a good decision. And I think he kind of ruined the rest of his career by going to the Lakers, if I'm going to be honest. I think he went there to pursue acting in Hollywood. And I'm just like, dude, you're a basketball player. Like, you're trying to compete with Michael Jordan's legacy. Like, you think Michael Jordan would have tried to go to a place with nice weather? No, he cared about winning. And I just don't think LeBron really cared about winning at the latter part of his career. Again, amazing athlete, but he went to the Lakers with 3 rookies on the team to build his media company, to make Space Jam 2 that no one watched. Like, to me, it was just such a weird decision at the end of his career. Yes, he won a ring in LA, but I mean, if you think one ring is enough to be an all-time Laker, like that's just not the standard at all. And again, that ring, you know, given the COVID, like a lot of people wonder, you know, really how much more could he have done? Because every other year he either got out of the playoffs or lost in the first or second round. I don't want to say the bubble ring doesn't count, but maybe the bubble ring is not the most exciting for people. NVIDIA 217. MJ went to baseball. Yes, he went to baseball after his father was murdered and he needed a break after he won 3 championships in a row. It's a little bit, and then he came back to the same team. A little bit different. LeBron went, if you listen to why he went to the Lakers, he wanted a different lifestyle. I'm not saying you have to stay in Cleveland. I'm just saying he went to a team with rookies on it where there was obviously no shot they were going to win, to build his lifestyle in Hollywood and set up his media career. Like, I felt like it stopped his ability to actually, you know, compete for championships at scale. But that's my take. I still love LeBron. I just hope wherever he goes, you know, he has a better shot to do well. Meta right there at 601 as that continues to go green. And also, if Luka competed with OKC, I still think they would have lost, dude. OKC is just too good. Maybe they would have had a chance to win a couple games, but Luka and LeBron is just not a good mix. We have to be honest about it. Like, it's just not, you know? Intel, wow, getting hit right here, 9% down. You Laker fans are so mad at me. Like, I'm a LeBron guy, dude. I watched the Lakers game last night for a reason. Like, I want to see LeBron do well. I did not like the decision going to the Lakers back then.
If there was a real team there, it would have made sense. But his argument around Hollywood, and I was like, dude, that's not like, you can do that when you retire. I just felt like it wasn't really that exciting of a move to make at the end of your career. Navitas, my goodness, 17% down. And then Qualcomm down 11%. So we're actually seeing a real red day for the semiconductor names. SPY's down 0.76, almost down 1%. Where's Micron? Okay, loses 750 again. So now do we lose 746 where it bottomed at about 20 minutes ago? It should have been starting point guard for the Pistons. My dream was to be in the NBA when I was younger. And I realized I wasn't getting that tall. Again, still love LeBron, though. LeBron was my GOAT until the past 5 years. Like, I would argue people in high school that LeBron was better than Jordan. And then I got to go to Jordan, dude. Like, it's Jordan. So I fought for him. I was there when he was winning those Heat championships. I was up late at night in middle school seeing those happen. Like, I lived through the LeBron years. I just think Jordan still is the ultimate GOAT. All right, 747 on Micron. What other headlines do we have? What else do we have? Apple still at new all-time highs. The market rotating into Apple and some of the value stocks like a Costco and a Verizon today. Walmart hits 130. That's almost at all-time highs, close to it. So is this normal? I don't think anyone should be upset about this or freaking out about it. Like, yeah, Micron's going down 6% after going up 600% over the past year, right? Does it matter? Probably not too much, unless this trend continues over the coming days, which haven't happened yet. Amit, stop talking about LeBron. We can't argue with you behind the phone screen. It's worse than politics. That's true. It is worse than politics. Honestly, sports gets people so emotional. Well, that's my take. It is what it is. Some of you agree, some of you disagree. I think we'll see more LeBron eventually. I don't think this was his last game. Him still down 11, tried to recover, but that one still went down. Nothing matters until we get news from the China meeting. This is a little aggressive, though, on some of these names. Then again, the ride up was also aggressive. Qualcomm down 10. I talked to another friend yesterday who works in the tech space. I asked him what he thinks about Qualcomm, and he says he does not understand what's happening here. The reason for that is because he does not think the smartphone market has bottomed. That was the first assumption you have to make to buy Qualcomm. Number two, he says Qualcomm is not in the data center, and they've historically said that they're going to enter into new markets, and they haven't executed on that, which is why the stock was the only semiconductor stock that was flat for the past 5 years. Like, execution has been horrendous on Qualcomm. Now, they're cheap, 100% they're cheap, but there's a classic example where they're cheap for a reason. And then the final thing he said was, once again, he doesn't know if the architecture of all these new CPUs inside of these new devices that the Qualcomm CEO keeps talking about and pumping are even going to be in any demand. Like, smartphones have demand, but smartphone sales, according to the person I was talking to yesterday, have not bottomed. And so you've got to really believe that that's bottomed. And if it's not, imagine if smartphone sales fall another 10% next year, what if there's not a massive upgrade cycle? Then Qualcomm obviously will make less revenue. So they've got to enter the data center. And if they don't enter the data center, then it's hopes and dreams on this like OpenAI phone that they're building on. Granted, the stock is still moved. So, I mean, it's one of those things where the potential of it continuing to move, I think, might keep it afloat. But that fundamental thesis is what some people are questioning a little bit. Wow, Micron loses 745. Okay, so every key level today, or 746, I should say, has been violated. I guess 740 is next. And I wonder if we end up getting back down there. Lights down 6%. Oh my. Whoa, this was at 1,000. This was at 1,100 yesterday. Okay, so Corning has got to get wrecked here as well. Yep, 210 to 194. Coherence, we got to get wrecked. Oil was at 101. Where is oil now? 102, 101.9. Wall Street Journal says it received subpoenas for the records of its reporters, an exceedingly rare move by Trump's DOJ that prompted concerns that the admin is impinging on press freedom. Wow. Wall Street Journal says their reporters have received subpoenas from Trump's DOJ. Oh my. Michael Burry says he buys more Mercado Libre and ZTS. Zotis. I do not know this company. 37 billion market cap. Stock is up. Stock is down 40% year to date. This is an American drug company, the world's largest producer of medicine and vaccinations for pets and livestock. It was a subsidiary of Pfizer. Why is he buying this? Vaccinations for pets? They obviously had a bad earnings. Huh. Okay. 40% down. Hanta, yeah, but wouldn't he just buy Pfizer or Moderna at that point? This company specializes in pet vaccinations. Unless he thinks the hantavirus will affect pets more or something. Huh, that's interesting. Allbirds is down. Micron recovering a touch 744. Now it's back to almost 750. SoFi is down 2 as well. There is a huge tick problem among livestock with Lyme disease. Well, he's long. Mercado Libre and Mercado Libre is the interesting buy. I think it's a good buy, but I mean, the margins here are not the best, and it feels like this is a very long-term story versus short-term recovery. Unless he thinks the dip is overdone, but I'm not sure. He's trolling everyone to get you to pay for a Substack to find out why he does the buys. Dude, he's killing the Substack game. I think the guy's making like $15 million a year on Substack. It's pretty incredible. SPY 733. SPY 733. Okay, what other news do we have? What else do we've got going on? RXT is up 5%. RXT is Rackspace. Again, this name had a massive move on earnings with the partnership with partnership with AMD. Along with their role inside data centers. NY Fed just had some comments. Let's see what they have to say around CPI.
Credit card balances actually fell. But look at the 90-plus day delinquencies. Overall, a 9-year high. Credit cards at a 15-year high, above 13%, and not been there since the wake of the great financial crisis. Auto loans at an all-time high for the series for delinquencies, and the series goes back to 2003. Mortgages, 8-year high, and student loans, a 7-year high. Now, the New York Fed, they like to focus on this transition rate. In other words, the flow into delinquencies. They say that is stable, so maybe they're a little less concerned there, but stable at a high level. Pre-pandemic credit cards, for example, the transition rates were around 5%. Now they're about 7%. When it was a real problem, they were around 11%. So not quite at the flashing red light level that we had in the Great Recession. Here are the 90-day plus day transition. Here's a chart from the New York Fed showing auto loans on the way up, student loan delinquencies on the way up, as well as credit cards. They're kind of a straight line on the way up there. But again, the transition rate is more stable. The first quarter data that we're showing here goes through March. So the question or the concern is whether credit stress for consumers has been on the increase in the wake of the surge and oil prices. Guys?
Well, the 9-year high for delinquencies, Steve, and that with the hotter than expected CPI report, not really painting a strong picture for the U.S. consumer.
No, and it's a smart idea, Seema, to put those two things together, because one thing we get with the CPI report is what's happening to real earnings. And real earnings are falling. If you just, the math is that you get the nominal earnings, how much you get in your paycheck, and you subtract the inflation rate, that was down 0.2, and that following a 0.9 decline. Of course, we have those big refunds that were out there. So that's, I think, helping the consumer cost. And one thing I want to show you real quick is the probabilities of rate hikes actually creeping into the futures markets here. You can see that it's about 30% for December. But if you look at what's happening in March, a 50% chance of a rate hike is out there. Now you can see that it's kind of a new development. Or sorry, April we're showing here at 56%, 51% for March, and 56% for April. So that's high on the mind of the markets right now, especially as you see the 10-year creep up towards 445 and also the 2-year rise. Seema?
Hey, Steve, your comments about delinquencies made me think about that Times piece earlier in the week where they talked about this so-called hamster wheel of credit among households. I did want to ask you on CPI this morning, there was some discussion going into the print about whether there would be some payback for assumptions that were made about shelter surrounding the shutdown. Did we get that?
Yes, we did. It was up 0.5%, a little bit hotter than it's been. It's a very strange situation, Carl. Overall, the thinking is that rents have been coming down. The trouble was that when they had the shutdown, they put in zeros for rents, and we know that's not true. A bit of payback in April, it came back up to 0.5%. Overall, it's expected to come down over time because rents apparently are falling across the country. And the trouble has been, Carl, even going back before the shutdown, the kind of difficulty that the CPI has in incorporating contemporary rent data. So I think that's going to be okay. And part of the push inside the core number today came from that. That should come off. The other,
bro, rent is not going down. Has anyone seen their rent go down? I mean, on an aggregate basis, maybe it's going down. I've not. Micron loses 745 or 744. Okay, so $2 away from 742 here. 740. You got to see if this one loses that level. Lumentum down 7, but my rent's not going down. In fact, when I renew this lease, I wonder if they're going to spike it up even further. Mine went up 5%. Mine just went up recently. I mean, I'm sure it's falling in certain areas, and that, you know, balances out in New York and LA and Chicago and some of the big cities where it's hard for rent to fall, but it's not happening everywhere. 742 on Mr. Micron here. My rent has been flat for like 10 years. Well, you know, if you're grandfathered in into certain apartments as well, like in New York, you know, there's regulations that protect it. But obviously, if you're getting a brand new spot, it's hard for it to be the case. In the Netherlands, they raise it by 4 to 6% every year. Does the Netherlands or any of these types of countries subsidize it to any extent at all? Like, I'm assuming they're not the friendliest to landlords. Because, you know, I know they subsidize a lot of other different types of social services, but I would imagine rent could be one of the things that in some direct or indirect way gets subsidized. Intel right there down 9%, 117. All right, so people got to buy the dip. I mean, we got to see if people buy the dip, right? Like if people want this rally to keep going, this dip has to get bought. 7%, 9%, 6%. These are dips. Now, Micron just lost 740. They're not dips that are aggressive, given how much the names have run, but they're dips that have to be bought, right? Because if they don't get bought, they get sold off. And if they get sold off, then we keep dipping. So someone has to step in, whether it's institution, algos, retail, and say we're taking a shot here. Not really. They just reduce some of your taxes. Sell in May, go away. Well, it's been 12 days of May, and May has been really good. So that hasn't held up yet, but we do have 3 weeks left. Yeah, these are prices that have not been seen since yesterday. That is also true. Let's see, man. Now Micron kind of in free fall here is 7.2. I don't know. Does it lose 730? When did it even get to 700? When did this happen? This was like Friday, right? We were at 646 on May 8th. By May 8th, end of day, we crossed 700. So that was 4 days ago, it touched 700. It hit 818 last night. The Q's 701. There's not really a major reason besides CPI and oil spiking. But then again, the market has not cared about that for the past few weeks. Maybe this Trump-China thing, the market's kind of a little nervous about what results in that. But there's not like a headline around memory, a headline around data centers. There's nothing like that. So it also could just be people finally taking some profits here, which is not crazy. Amit, do you like Zeta at these prices? Yes, but once again, if the market doesn't like it, then it's dead money. Like, do I like it at a $4 billion market cap growing 50%? Yeah, 2.7 times price of sales. But if the market can't get excited about Palantir or Microsoft, they're not going to get excited about Zeta. If they can't get excited about Apple, you know, it's just, it might be a little tough. But that might also be the opportunity if you're willing to be patient. Micron 733. VIX is only up. Yeah, the VIX is not up that much either. The VIX is up 3%. It's still below 19. So you're not even seeing a massive move down here. We did release more oil from the SPR yesterday, if I'm not wrong, to try to calm down some of these oil prices. Gas in Jersey has hit 450. That's the highest I've seen. Or actually, it was 465, I think. So those gas prices obviously continue to be up there. And I guess, you know, that's probably why CPI has been this ugly. Is there a catalyst for reversal today? I don't think so. There's no big earnings. There's no macro data. The catalyst would have to be people step in and say, all right, I'm going to buy. I'm going to take a shot on Intel at 117. Intel down 9% right here. HIMS, Jeffries cut their price target to 24.50 on HIMS. So you got some of these HIMS downgrades coming in. Robinhood below 77. Do you hold Micron? I do not. But maybe this is the dip, man. Maybe this is the dip. Maybe. Gas is $7 a gallon. When I was there, I saw it at $6.30, so I can believe that. That's pretty incredible. Pretty freaking incredible. ASTS, dumpy dump. HIMS, dumpy dump. So this we're right across the board. I don't think demand for memory was solved overnight. Yeah, look, I mean, I think this is the algos taking over everything. Corning, Lumentum, Qualcomm, everything's going down right here. It feels kind of fake. I'm not going to, like, it feels like this thing reverses and it reverses violently. But then again, these stocks were all at all-time highs. Like, no one should be surprised about this. Now, I did see a lot of accounts yesterday buying Micron. Like, just I wrote a post because I was getting so many questions about FOMO. And I think people really resonated with the post. The post was a very simple post of just like, hey, I think if you have FOMO, you should ask yourself, if you buy Micron at 800, which I was seeing multiple screenshots of people buying last night, you got to be ecstatic to then buy it at 730. It's not controversial. If you're buying something at all-time highs, you have to be ready to buy it lower. You should want to buy it lower. You're dipping your toes to start the position. You should not spend all your money at an all-time high. I think that's just a general rule of thumb that people have. But a lot of people, you know, how excited are you after you bought it at 800 to buy it at 730? That's the question. And if you're not like, man, I can't wait to get some more Micron at 730, then you FOMO'd in, and that's never a good feeling for anyone to have. Or for Intel, for anyone who bought it at 130 yesterday. Like 8% is a dip. I don't care what people say. 8 to 10% is a dip. It's a dip where if you are long a company and you don't have a full position, you at least consider buying it. If that doesn't make you excited to buy, like when Palantir fell to 122, 123, I bought. And I posted all the screenshots. When Rock Lab fell to 65, 67, I bought. Like as much as it sucked to be in the red Oracle at 130, I bought. Like there's like I was excited on buying those names. I was crying a little bit, but I was still excited. So if you're in a Micron or Lumentum or Coherent, you got to be excited. Qualcomm, if you bought it at 230, you have to be excited for an 11 to 15% dip. RSI means it's overextended 100%. And you know, I mean, that begs the question, is the RSI continuing to be overextended a reason for why you don't buy? But then it also begs the question, why did you buy at the all-time high if the RSI was overextended, right? If you were looking at the RSI to base your decision, then you would have never bought in the first place. PayPal's green. PayPal's green? Really? Wow, PayPal is green. That is green. PayPal. Finally a good day for Technical Tuesday. Yeah, Jason can show us some setups here. I pay $4.98 unleaded in Chicago suburbs. Visiting here, Georgia's $4.10 unleaded. I was there as well. Major difference from Illinois. Yeah, I mean, I wonder how much the average person who doesn't care about the stock market is, you know, annoyed at these gas prices. Rock Lab as well, still down 2%. Red Cat, Ukraine nears deal with Pentagon to test drones in the US. Drone stocks not getting any love on that. Red Cat down, DPro down. The Qs, did we lose 700? DPro down 5%. The Qs are 79 cents away from losing 700. Average people are on record credit card debt. That is fair. That is true. I don't know if the street is going to care. So on that website, AI Buildouts, I'm going to have a section for names that essentially have a thesis for myself. So like, remember how I did that one pager for a couple stocks that we talked about in October? I'm going to have a section on the website, aibuildouts.com, where there's like essentially one pagers, which is like my thesis on it. There'll probably be accompanied with a Substack article, but like if you don't want to read the whole article, it'll have a one pager. And the names, at least that I'm looking at right now, big one is Corning, which is making me very excited that it's down 7% right here because I have not bought this yet. It was at 213 last night, so you're seeing a nice reversal down here. That's one of the names I'm looking at. Lumentum, another name that I think has to require another look when it comes to the broader optic space. I feel like I'm going to deep dive into Qualcomm just because I feel like I have to, given it is seen as like one of those broader new entrants into the data center space for CPUs. So we'll be taking a look at that. And then Vertiv, actually, which has run like crazy, but this is one that I was watching a lot of videos on last night and just trying to understand how important cooling is. The problem is the damn thing is up so much that it's like, goodness, bro. Like it's one of those things where you don't want to buy the top. The first initial dip might not be the dip to buy, but then again, that might be your DCA. So you have to just be selective and careful with how you're looking at it. And then there's a bunch of other smaller names that are like sub 10 billion that I'll have on that list that we will take a look at as well. Memory's still holding. 733 has not lost 730 yet. Not lost 730. The Qs, did they lose 700? Oh, they did. That was a pretty big drop right there. That was 700.97 right back down. DRAM's down 10. It should be down, right? All the memory names are down. Are you noticing relative strength in AAOI? Yes, especially after that reversal from 130 on the earnings. I have to do broader due diligence on these guys. I mean, they're up a lot this year. I understand they're important in optics, but they didn't have the best earnings, and management has really shit the bed many times with this company over the past few years. So management is the red flag for a lot of people. Granted, they are exactly in the right space they need to be when it comes to CPO. So it's one of those things where the name has run a lot, but the relative strength is very, very high. Coherent down 5. Apple still pushing. Qualcomm now loses 210. VIX just hit 19. Officially 3% up for the day. The SPY is officially down 1% for the day. 732. What did you guys say in the poll on if this drawdown continues? Where's AMD? Are we still at 450? 437. Okay, AMD is getting hit as well. I'll look at the stock draft in a second. 64% of you say yes, we see a 10% drawdown in the next 3 months. Okay, I am back to beating Matt, but by a hair. Matt's at 48.13. I'm at 48.29. Steve is at 37. Tanner's at 7. Chris is at 19.7. So that's what we got on the stock draft. Polymarket indicates that Cerebras will close at 256 a share on its first trading day, while the IPO is expected to be priced at 160. That is why I think for a trade, if you can get it at 160, 180, and it actually makes that run, it's probably a good flip. But if the semis reverse tomorrow, and then Cerebras goes public, I mean, maybe that valuation holds up even more aggressively than what people think. Is this all CPI? I don't think it's CPI. I think it's the market just chilling out on the semis today. This has just been the most aggressive day in the past month. The market has actually decided to take a break on the semis. But it's not even rotating meaningfully into software. So it's kind of like a break for the whole market, which is probably healthy for things to just chill out given how hot things have been running. Maybe some consolidation time gives a lot of people a chance for entries if they're interested. It could also be, incredibly technical here. Why did everything drop at 10 p.m. yesterday? That's a great question. Everything at 10 p.m., if you were looking at the overnight markets, everything fell 5%. I mean, mainly it was the semiconductor names, but everything got hit. But like the Microns, the same, everything was down. I don't know. Maybe it was SK Hynix and Samsung falling. SanDisk down 9% today. And maybe that triggered some of the memory semiconductor names to fall in the States. But then it recovered by the pre-market, at least to an extent. And now we're right back down. The 10-year, I mean, that thing's still not looking pretty, man. Officially 4.5 on the 10-year. This is not really sustainable. And I don't know what Trump can... Well, I mean, Trump can... If the war is over and oil comes down meaningfully, that'll get that 10-year down. Oracle down 5. But it doesn't look like Trump is ready to end it that quickly. The 30-year yield is now above 5%. 10 years above 4.5. Yeah, no, you're right, Dan. These were the exact levels that caused Trump. We talked about earlier to do the 90-day tariff pause in April. The problem is he can't do a pause this time. He would have to put out a headline that says the war is over, Qualcomm 208. Like the oil markets would have to actually believe him this time for the 10-year to drop and for people to buy a bond and for oil to come down, which would lead to inflation expectations coming down. But CPI didn't help prove that narrative. And then Trump saying, I don't feel any pressure to end the war anytime soon this morning also doesn't help with that issue. Where's CoreWeave? CoreWeave, oh my, is this going below 100? Dude, did anyone listen to that call and find a reason for why this thing should be down outside of just falling with the semis in general? Because all I heard was good things from CoreWeave. Iran had that weird NVIDIA pseudo investment, so I can understand why the street got upset about that for Iran, but I didn't hear anything bad for CoreWeave here. Maybe just got too hot at 135. Because they don't make money. None of them make money. We're all invested in these random plots of land that have levered the crap out of their balance sheets with debt and convertible notes and diluted everybody to justify deploying GPUs so that we can make pictures of cats jumping on birthday cakes. Like that's what these business models basically have become that we've all bought into. Which always gives me a weird feeling when I think about the neoclouds, but at the end of the day, we're compute constrained, so that's how you stomach it. I wonder when these companies ever become profitable. Like CoreWeave, I mean, when the hell will they ever become? Same thing with Nebius, Iran. Like, they are so far away from actually making any money profitably. Would you invest in that? A company that helps make cat videos? I mean, that's basically Google. They are the reason with YouTube why we have all of our cat videos. Oh, yeah, this is a great day to be an SOXS. Look at that, 17%. We talked about that yesterday. If you're buying semis heavy, if you're starting an allocation into semis, I think it is important to, because we're at all-time highs, and yes, we're down 5% today, but that doesn't deny the fact that we're still up a lot, to buy some protection with it, whether it's puts on those positions, long dated, or the inverse ETFs that are levered so that if you do have a fall, at least your long positions are somewhat protected by the short inverse of the broader semi sector. So it's not a horrible strategy to pair those together. Micron trying to get back up to 740. There's that green candle. Let's see if the buyers step in. Mid, are you a cat or dog person? I'm a dog person, but I don't have a dog. I wish I did, but I'm a dog person. Let's see. Is that green candle? Even Q's got a green candle. Is that it? 11:30. DRAM has a green candle. SPY has a green candle. AMD has a green candle. IGV has a 9-cent green candle. Software is just dead, bro. Intel, very little green candle. Okay, so 11:30. I'm actually curious. This could get rejected super quickly, or this might be start of the reversal. Not reversal to green, but reversal to make up at least 20, 30% of the losses. Even NVIDIA, down 2% right here. We got to see. Bro is scared of cats. It's not that I'm scared of cats. I just get a weird feeling with cats. Like, I don't know, dude. They're just, I don't know. They kind of freak me out. I'm not going to lie. Just a little. I had a cat when I was younger for a week. It's a story for a different day. But I don't know, dude. The cat just being all silent, walking around the house. Like, I don't know. It just like gives me the icks. Whereas a dog is like your best friend. It's just different. I don't know how to explain it. It's like mayo. I don't know how to explain it. Fresh Day says, me too, not a fan. I don't trust them. Thank you. Thank you. What happened to the cat? It's not about what happened to the cat. It was in 5th grade. We got a cat, me and my sister. And then my mom got really afraid of the cat because she had these dreams when she was younger about like cats and dogs chasing her. And it's like traumatized her from pets her whole life. And she just couldn't handle having a cat. She thought she wanted to be a good mom and get us a cat because me and my sister really wanted one. And then my mom was just, I can't handle it. So we had to return it back. That's the story. But I feel like some of that spilled over to me because like I'm fine with dogs, but cats are just, I don't know. Are you scared of rats? Yes. Dude, mice, rats, like hamsters, those types of rodents, I like shiver. Like in our old house 10 years ago, we had a mice, what is that word? Infestation? That's the right word, right? Yeah, infestation. And I was like, dude, I was like scared every day. Like sleeping on the, like I would see them run through. I would be like, oh my goodness, dude. It was like it was like that for about 2 weeks before we finally got it fully exterminated. Has anyone ever had mice in the house? Oh my goodness, dude, it's scary. Like I'm getting shivers just thinking about it. Like seeing a little rodent run through your living room, like it is. I think I might hate that more than mayo. I really, it's just. So anything that resembles that, I can't do it. Your mom returned your cat. Yes. I know it sounds embarrassing, but literally after a week, we returned it back to Petco and the lady hadn't even cashed out the check that we paid for it. She gave my mom her check back. She didn't even cash it out. It was crazy. My sister was upset. But to be honest, I don't think my sister and me were even going to really take care of the cat. We were both way too young. And my mom definitely wasn't taking care of it. So ASTS down 13.5. 13.5. Farzball says I'm putting extra mayo in the next sandwich I eat. Mayo and mice, dude. Can't do it. All right, you're seeing a little reversal, a little something. It's not getting a ton of bids, but it's not going down as much. The VIX is down a little bit. A little bit. But we are still relatively red on the day. Okay, what other headlines do we have? Let's see if we have any other main headlines for today. So red day, it is what it is. We're used to it over the past couple months. I know we've been distracted for the past few weeks, but we all know what a red day feels like. And quite frankly, a lot of other stuff, even if you're not heavy in the memory names or the semi names, Tesla, Rocket Lab, a lot of names coming back to help out retail portfolios. Google, massive earnings. Amazon still has done, it's up 20% for the year. Now it's less because it's lost 270, 264, but still it's, a lot of us got to buy this thing basically from 200 to 230. Obviously, HIM's messing up some portfolios today. ASTS not helping out. Celsius, I just don't know why the street hates this thing. ARM, if ARM loses 200, that would get a little ugly. 205, it peaked at 270 on earnings or 268. And then you have obviously some of your crypto stocks that are down. Midterm charts are identical. We might crash for no reason. That's the other thing that keeps me up a little bit at night. That damn midterm chart. Everyone's seen it. I don't need to show it again, but every 4 years, for whatever reason, it happens. The question is, has it already happened in March? Because if it did, then we had the midterm drawdown. The problem is when you look at the chart, you have a little bit of a dip in March, and then you move up in April and May. And May to October is when you really get the midterm. And look at S&P in 2022. I remember in April, we were pushing above 400, 410, 420. And it was almost like, I think Palantir was going from like 10 to 14. And it was like, oh, cool. We're like, we're moving out of this. And then June had the worst inflation print in 40 years. And we fell, to 368 until October of 2022. The same thing happened in 2018, right? It was just worse in December in 2018. So the next few months are always the worst months of the midterm year. I wonder if we put off a blow off the top rally in the past couple of weeks, or if the earnings growth once again makes it not susceptible to that type of drawdown. Because again, in 2022 and 2018, we did not have the types of earnings revisions that we're seeing in this market. And maybe it disproves the midterm cycle. Coherent 365. That's another good point. In 2022, liquidity was contracting because we were hiking. This year, we're not hiking. We're definitely not cutting, but liquidity is expanding more than contracting. That's the other thing that happened in the dot-com bubble as well. We were hiking rates, which is what also really hurt the market to cause the full-on inevitable drawdown. We've been hiking for the past couple of years, and earnings once again have been ChatGPT, AI, NVIDIA, et cetera, been enough of a reason to not care. And if that continues to be the narrative, then maybe that doesn't result in that midterm drawdown we usually see. I'll try to find that chart on the midterm election cycle, but it looks the same. Wow, what a headline. So remember when freaking Larry Fink yesterday was talking about compute futures? CME Group launches compute futures. CME Group, the world's leading derivatives marketplace, and Silicon Data, the industry leader in GPU market intelligence, announced they will launch a first-in-class compute futures market later this year. As the backbone of the digital economy, compute is the new oil of the 21st century. Wow. Either that's the toppiest thing ever, or we are going to be trading compute futures like we trade oil and corn futures. Every AI model trained, every transaction cleared, and every byte of data processed runs on compute, said CME Group Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Terry Duffy. Bro, that is crazy. I guess there's a reason Larry Fink said that yesterday. This is why I think more of these dips are going to be bought than not. All these companies, every one of them that have been rallying, they play a role in building compute. And as a result of that, if you've got, I mean, when you get into the futures market, imagine you have trillions of dollars trading compute futures. That means all these companies' earnings are going to be even more relevant because they will literally determine the price of compute, or at least the capacity for compute, which then dictates the price of compute. Yeah, compute futures is the new gold. How many people think that's like crazy and that's like way too aggressively excited? And how many people think that's what should be happening? Because it's not wrong. Like, you can't blame BlackRock for getting into this market because, I mean, if compute is the oil of our generation, you know, why wouldn't they? Like, it feels like it does make sense, at least to an extent. I'm trying to find this midterm election year chart. I showed it last week, but the chart continues to kind of look the same over the midterm years. It's not that crazy. It's definitely not that crazy. Compute futures is the future. This is okay. While I'm looking for this chart, let's listen to Warren Pies, because I thought this was also a very interesting take that he had right here around what's happening with earnings and kind of how you should think about the nature of earnings growth in this bull market.
63-day basis, that's like 98th, 99th percentile. This is not changing earnings themselves. It's a change in estimates. Next 12 months estimates is up 25% right now. And it's just straight up at the moment.
What's up 25%? Wait, earnings are up 25%?
Earnings estimates are up. So that's positive. Whenever you go out and mention that, though, there's a healthy reservoir of skepticism still out there about anything fundamental in this market. It was something we talked about, you and I, 18 months ago, last time I was on your show, was about the valuations in this market and how people viewed it. But one of the big pushbacks is that this is a top-heavy earnings event. So you're getting memory, NVIDIA, large oil and gas companies driving the bulk of this in the most recent near-term earnings increase. And so that's true. I guess the better question, though, is whether that matters and whether that negates the signal from earnings, the earnings estimate increase that we're seeing. And our work suggests no, it's not a problem.
So earnings expectations this year are up 11%. People may say, "Oh, those analysts are too rosy." Actually, analysts, you say that they know what they're talking about, and honestly, they always sandbag. Like, the beat rate for companies is like 70%. So if anything, they're underestimating stuff, and it is something that people should be paying attention to. And Warren, you note in your piece for 314 that you got a lot of skeptical pushback from people who said, "Oh, it's just Micron and stuff." One of those people would be myself. I said, "Warren, very interesting stuff and great chart. Curious if you have a view on the concentration of the earnings per share upgrades, i.e. so much of it is Micron and oil companies." A huge percentage of the increases in earnings per share are from semiconductors, in particular, the high bandwidth memory companies such as Micron, and then oil. So the idea is, Warren, how can this be a broad-based earnings boom that's so bullish if it's just like a handful of companies and then also oil companies, which cannot be bullish for the S&P because, yes, high oil benefits oil companies, but it hurts almost everyone else.
First, it's true. So what you're saying is true. There is a huge spread between the median industry earnings estimate growth versus the index level. And that's really what you're talking about. That there's only a handful of stocks driving these estimates higher. So we went back and looked, okay, when does this happen? And it's not like it's something that happens at market tops. This is the concern that, oh, this is how things splinter at tops. And it happened in 2000, which it did happen in 2000, but it also happened in 97 and then 98 and then 99. And it also happened in 2009 coming out of the GFC. And it happened in late 2020 coming out of COVID. So it's totally normal in an early and mid cycle. And then there's a whole bunch of other dates. If you look, when we see this spread between index and median earnings growth blow out. And so there's a whole bunch of dates. And I'd say outside of the 2000 case, the dates are mostly mid and early cycle. Like I said, 2020, 2009, saw one in 2018, saw one in the early mid 90s. Like you can see the lines here. These aren't entirely bearish times to be invested. And so to me, it's like a who cares type of thing. The other side is energy. Yeah, energy is a tax. And we were pretty nervous in February as we saw energy become kind of leadership for the market. And so I understand that. But when you look at S&P X energy, earnings estimates are still up close to 10% year to date. So you put in full index estimates, it's like 11%.
So kind of the core argument he's making is, look, and here's the chart, by the way. He's saying, yes, there's only a certain few companies and sectors that are contributing to all the earnings growth. But at the end of the day, there is still earnings growth. And you don't want to be bearish just because a few names are contributing to the earnings, because that's like saying the Max 7 were the reason for the bull market in 23 and 24, which they were, but it was still a bull market. Right. And eventually it brought it out. And now the Max 7 have become the Lag 7. And, the rotation has kind of taken place to other names, even if it's still concentrated. So the takeaway is you continue to be bullish. It's just understanding how much of the earnings growth has been constructed within one core sector. And then obviously the benefits of AI need to happen for other companies to continue showing that earnings growth. But this is the chart right here. So as you can see, during the midterm years, from May to October, literally every time since 1949, it's just been a downtrend. Like, and I remember in the beginning of January when we were doing our previews for what to expect for 2026, this was one of the concerns, and maybe it's an irrational concern just because it's like, oh, you're looking at this chart and this chart tells you that this might happen again, but it's happened every time. And you can even see the March dip that happens every time, and then the recovery into May, and then the top out, which leads to an October bottom. If that happens again, and people missed the run-up on many names like myself when it comes to Micron or something like that, I mean, we're going to have wow, Micron just lost 743 back to 732. So it failed the breakout or the reversal at 742.24, got hit right there and fell right back to 732. So all the semis once again going down. If we do have that draw, and there's a part of me that thinks Tom Lee saw that chart, and I know he's talking about the Fed chair, but I think he's also looking at that chart and just being like, that could happen again. And it is likely to happen again because it's happened every single time. Which means if it does happen, then, these stocks that people have missed are going to have opportunity. If that happens, there will absolutely be an opportunity to buy these names cheaper. If that happens again. The question is, will that happen again? Now, the year after that, we have a massive run. We've talked about that as well. The year after a midterm year, the average gain is about 32.4%, which encompasses usually a 15% drawdown, so net 15%. But you always buy the midterm dip, like always. It always tends to play out the year after. 2018 to 2019, 2022 to 2023. But I think a lot of us are questioning, do we get that midterm dip this time? And I don't think we fully know. All right, is that it for today? Is that all the headlines? Pakistan Foreign Minister discussed with his Chinese counterparts efforts to facilitate dialogue between Washington and Tehran to enhance peace. The Pakistanis really trying to get credit. They are trying to insert them into this beef and be the mediators. I get it, you know, geopolitically, it's so smart for them to be involved here and be the reason that, we potentially solved the issue here. It's just so random to me. It's like the Pakistanis woke up and be like, dude, we got a geopolitical crisis. We got to get to the bottom of this. We have to. Like, we're the Pakistanis. This is what we do. We solve the issues. It's like they don't solve any of these issues geopolitically. And they're not really expected to because it's Pakistan, you know? But I feel like they want to take the responsibility here. Micron loses 730. All right, so this is a real dip today. 8.35%. That is a real dip. Okay. I guess that's it. We'll be back in the market close and see if this reverses. So on May 12th, we do have NVIDIA coming up on May 20th. That's also going to be a big one. Tesla taking a hit. Where is Tesla? Wow, 445 to 427. Palantir at 135, 134. Hood's down. Rocket Lab's still holding. 120 to 114 is not that crazy, but down 2%. Amazon down 1. CoreWeave down 10. Yeah, imagine NVIDIA goes back below 200, which I know if we get a really ugly drawdown, you could see that happening. But that would be another opportunity on NVIDIA here. All right, that's it for me today. We'll be back on the market close. We'll see what happens. Hopefully we get some reversal. If not, then it is what it is. It's a red day. And, there are red days in the midst of these types of rallies. On the close today, we have Technical Tuesday. That's the more important thing. We have Oklo earnings. That's it. So nothing too crazy to look at. But we will get into TT and we'll get Jason's thoughts on a lot of different stuff that's going on. Okay, word of the day. Word of the day. What do we got? What do we have? Adroit. Skillful, clever, and quick in handling situations. She was adroit at navigating volatility, calm execution, fast adjustments. I feel like I'm going to be right on this. Let's go 2 for 2. Let's see. I'm going to be right, I think.
Adroit.
Dude, we got a streak. 2 days. I don't think we've ever gone longer than 2 days, but our streak is now 2 days here. There you go. All right. That is it. Where are we on fear and greed? We got to be lower today, right? Yeah, 64. We were at 67 the other day. So coming down a little bit. We'll see how the market reacts. Again, not crazy to have a red day in the midst of a lot of the green that we've seen. But question here is, do people come in? Wow, Micron losing 725. Okay, so this one's actually really getting hit. Are we going to lose 720 today? NVIDIA is actually not spiking, but it's getting a green candle here. You see that right there, 214 to 217. So NVIDIA is getting a green candle. The other semis are not, which means there's a little divergence happening. SanDisk down 9. Software still down with it. AMD continues to go down 434. So you're seeing a bit more red here. All right, that's it for me. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate it. I will see you guys in a little bit. Hope everyone has a good day. We'll be back soon on the market close. We'll have Jason on, and we'll try to see what he's thinking technically around some of these entries, and we'll keep going from there. That's it. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Oh, is Steve live? Can we spam Steve with something? He is live. What do we spam Steve with? We need a good word. What is a word? What is a word we can spam Steve with? There's the link right there. What happened in Chicago? Oh, let's do let's do let's do 14,000 steps. Okay. 14,000 steps. Why am I saying that? Because on Saturday morning, I slept in and he wanted to go explore the city and he walked 14,000 steps. By the time he got to lunch, this guy, I've never seen him this tired, bro. He was huffing and puffing. He was like, oh my gosh. So 14,000 steps, 14K steps. He'll know exactly what it means. He showed me his Apple Health thing. He was like, dude, I have not walked these many steps in a long time. So that's what we got. I'll leave Steve's links right there. And 14K steps is what we can spam it with. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll be back for the market close. Have a good one. See you guys in a bit.